Thick, hot liquid runs down my arm. Blood. Funny, I don't remember the guard nicking me with his sword before my fist connected with his face. Despite being a flash, he apparently couldn't manage to move faster than my right hook to his jaw. The smell of soot stings my nose, forcing me to clamp a grimy hand over it to stop a sneeze from slipping out.
God!
That would have been a very pathetic way to get caught. When I'm sure my nose won't alert the Imperials lurking beneath where I'm hiding, I return my hand to the filthy wall my back is currently pressed against with my feet planted opposite me. Description. After taking a deep breath that nearly has me choking on soot, I slowly begin to climb upwards once again. With thighs burning almost as much as my nose, I force my body to continue shimmying while stifling the sneeze.
I think I'm going crazy. Every time I read a section of this, I notice more alliterations. One day, by corollary, I'm going to read this book and every single word in it will start with the same letter. That's crazy. I did not notice there's 2 3-word alliterations in the same sentence in here. What is going on? Glad everyone could make it. Welcome back to another meeting of the St. Balasar University English Club, the best critique group that nobody asked for. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Jay.
And I know if you've been a member for a little bit now, you know our last episode was a little bit emotionally involved. We stayed in the club room a little bit longer than we normally do because there was just so much to get through, and it kind of ballooned from there. But I'm really excited to just have a more casual, hangout sort of vibe today. We're not going to be dealing with anything cruel or controversial or that complicated even. So I think this is going to be a good day. Just going to have a normal one.
Just a normal, regular day.
In fact, I'm actually really excited for today's episode because, dear club members, I am proud, excited, and ecstatic to announce that we have finally received our first ever podcast book to have been written by a 12-year-old.
This is a big day.
It's a big day.
If you're 12.
Yeah. We received Powerless by Lauren Roberts. For months, middle school student Lauren Roberts has been rushing through her pre-algebra homework to write her first ever novel, and that work has finally paid off. She thought she would share with us the first draft of this book today. We have a great first draft here. I don't know how you feel, Jay, but I really think that this is really good for someone who isn't even in high school yet.
Well, gee whiz, if it's good enough for Simon & Schuster, it ought to be good enough for me.
Simon & Schuster. Yeah, that's so crazy, Lauren, because you're 12 years old and in middle school, but maybe if you'd make some more edits and maybe a second draft, even a third if we're feeling really crazy, you could be picked up by a Big Four publisher, even something crazy like Simon & Schuster. You know, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to be realistic. I don't think this is quite at the quality for the Big Four publishers, but it's so close. There's so many amazing things that you're doing in this book. There's just a little bit more work you need.
I mean, I'm just impressed that somebody's NaNoWriMo project was able to be this long, quite frankly.
Yeah, 500 pages.
You know, I feel like a lot of people shit on NaNoWriMo, but I guess for some people working under the time constraints, they're able to just push out a lot of quantity. Yeah. Maybe not all of that needs to make it into the final draft, but some of it.
Some of it.
Some of it.
Oh my god. I'm sorry. That was our meanest opening bit yet, but it's crazy how this book feels like the first draft written by a 12-year-old.
It feels like somebody wrote a first draft and then in my version, they did copy edits. I don't know about yours. It sounds like maybe not.
Yeah, because I think, so behind the bit, Lauren Roberts, she's 21 now. She wrote it when she was 18. and it was self-published. And that self-publication is still like in circulation in certain circles, and it's riddled with like spelling errors and weird grammatical things. But when Simon and Schuster picked it up, I think it did get the proper level of copy editing. So between reviewers, even you'll see like different levels of like critique of like brass tacks things. But
Well, I'm glad that I got the prim and proper UK edition, free, as far as I noted, of copy editing errors.
so it's really an experience to read this book. I'm sure you've heard about this already. This is one of those like new BookTok books. It's compared often to Lightlark, and I have a lot to say about how I feel that those two books are in conversation with each other. But it's pitched to us as Red Queen meets Hunger Games meets, I guess, like Psych. I've also heard it compared to the BBC Sherlock Holmes show, but I've never seen it. So
Who said that? Who said
what do
that?
you mean, who said that? A reviewer said that.
That is, those people have not watched Sherlock recently.
Okay. We'll get into it. I don't know. Maybe Psych is the better metaphor. We'll get into it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm super excited for this one. This will not be 4.5 hours. We're just gonna have fun with this crazy, crazy book and see if there's certain good things that the book did that we can bring to the fore, if there's suggestions that we can offer that are true to the book's mission. But before we get started with that, I do want to take a second to thank our channel members and the people who have supported us in coffee recently. The Order of the Orb Fox is Pink Catsy, who we have to blame for this entire episode. Dreekalith, the intrepid Lightlark fact checker, who corrects me about everything that we've said about Lightlark because he can actually read, unlike us. And opera writer Aiden Feldkamp. And we've also recently received support from steadfast Instagram story liker FJ, as well as artist Jams Can Draw, who still has a few commission slots left open on their Ko-Fi, I think, as of yesterday. This might have changed. If you like supporting artists and getting art yourself, hit them up. Our episode on Crown of Starlight was just what we needed to get us across the finish line for the YouTube Partner Program. So now our list of supporters includes you, the person watching this.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, literally. This is a dream. If you like what we do and you want more of it, if you want early access to our content, exclusive Discord access, if you want extended editions of our episodes with video, if you want Empress Teresa stickers to spam in the comment section of our YouTube videos, there's a place for you here at the English Club. You can find all about it in the membership page of our channel, as well as our Ko-Fi, which...
Yeah, you can find the link to our Ko-Fi at our website, which is englishclubpodcast.com, and probably also in the description down below.
I got really mad at this book reading it, but hopefully that'll turn into like good content for you guys. So on that note, I guess we're gonna get right into the summary. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoy. So here's the thing, Jay. I actually got some constructive criticism about our podcast the other day.
Oh.
And you know how much we value constructive criticism here at our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So other Jay, Lightlark Jay, you know, the one that kept prank calling you a couple months ago?
Yes, I remember quite well.
Yeah, you were much chagrined by that night. He told me that our podcast format was getting a little bit too rigid. You know, I think we got spoiled earlier when you were finishing your MFA and we started only reading one half of the book each, so we each had ownership over that one part of the book to like critique and summarize. So even when we started reading the whole book again, we still went with this I'll take one half, you take the other half dynamic through the summaries. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that's true. And to be fair, I do defend this situation for things like Nova's Playlist or Crown of Starlight, where either the plot is so batshit that you have to know everything going on in it, or just like we're the only ones reading it. So if you're going to get a plot summary, it'll probably be from us, that we have like that ode to our listeners. But preserving Powerless to that degree, I feel like would be a disservice to the literary community. So
yeah,
I was dreading summarizing this book personally. And
yeah, usually I feel like I am the one who asks like who wants what half. and I was really putting off sending that text because I didn't like either answer. Both seemed kind of untenable, so I was just sort of waiting to see if you would make the first move.
And it's not a complicated book. It's not like a particularly challenging text, but it's just so much. It's so much to just lay upon you. So I was thinking about this, and it wasn't always like this with you and I, Jay. Once upon a time, there were two young podcasters who didn't have an awesome Discord channel or a monetized YouTube. They had nothing but a dream. And they summarized the books that they were reading the only way they knew how, by shouting out random crap that we remembered happening in the book in a somewhat chronological order.
Yeah.
So, how about, Jay, for old time's sake, we work on the summary together as one from beginning to end?
I feel like that sounds beautiful, and I think that the things that we both remember and the things that one of us forgets and the other remembers, and then the things that we also both just completely forget will synchronize beautifully into sort of like a replication of the experience of reading the book. You're not going to get all the details, but you're going to get an interpretation of how the book moved through our bodies.
I don't want it to be described as that.
I think that's accurate to the spirit of this spice novel, as they call it.
This intentionally unspiced novel, I will say.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's 12, so I think that's probably for the best.
We're so mean. Okay, so let's set the stage. Powerless takes place in, I think, a city-state. Is it a large kingdom or like just the one city? I think there is a map, so already this is better than Lightlark, but I don't get a good sense of the geography of Ilia here.
Yeah, so the crazy thing is that I feel like Ilia is used as the name of the country and the continent and maybe even the city, because if you do go to the map, the largest part of the city is labeled Loot Alley, which that can't be true. There's no way that's it.
Well, no, I think it's like the world's shittiest polis. Like, legitimately, I just think it is a city-state that just sucks.
Okay, you think it just sucks.
And maybe it has, like, interests in owning here and there in, like, the desert or the scorches and all of that, but, like, the thing that is Ilia is just a city that consists mostly of slums, because I think that's kind of funny.
Slums and then like one plastic fairy tale castle.
We'll get to the fairy tale castle. It's so funny. So that's what we're dealing with here. It used to be just kind of a normal, unmagical secondary world fantasy, but then 30 years ago, there was a plague. Actually, I think that's called the Plagues.
A capital P plague.
Capital P plural plague, implying multiple plagues. So the thing is, Lauren is 21 now. She wrote it when she was 18, which would be 3-4 years ago. How much do you want to bet that the plagues are just COVID?
Yeah, they definitely are.
I feel like
this was definitely a COVID novel.
And that's like, that's kind of harrowing to me, because I know that there are, but like things that have infected the zeitgeist affected by COVID, this is the first instance of this being like in a book. And again, I know books about COVID have been published, but like abstracted to the form where now it's in like the cultural memory and not even like brought to the fore as like a frame of reference. I thought that was like, it just made me feel old, basically.
It's a little unsettling because it definitely potentially foreshadows like a version of our podcast where going forward, like more books have to be put in relation to COVID, you know, where we have to like talk about its cultural impact or something because it's in living memory. And I don't really like the thought of that, but I don't know.
Something I have no interest in doing whatsoever. So I bring up the COVID poll because I remember when the vaccines first started rolling out, there was like, oh, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine gave me superpowers or whatever, because that's what I thought about. Because these plagues give a swath of the population these magical powers. So
extremely specific superpowers, kind of like in the way, in like I guess like the CW Flash TV show, like
Mm-hmm.
select people who get hit by the particle accelerator exploding, like get a very specific superpower. Or like in Agents of Shield,
Mm-hmm.
when in that one season randomly a bunch of characters like awaken extremely specific powers. Like they
That's
can each kind of do like one thing.
that's how that works. So this is all happening 3 decades before the events of the novel. Random people get powers. These people become the elites. The people who do not get powers become the ordinaries. And then there is this event known as the Purging, which is the current king who. What is the current king's name? I don't remember the guy's.
I was hoping that neither of us would ever ask that because I don't know.
Okay. King Daddy, 30 years ago, decided that having ordinaries living amongst the elites will dilute the bloodlines and weaken the power of the elites over time. So there was a literal, like, killing off all of the ordinaries moment that happened. And from that point on, everyone who lives in Ilia, who is allowed to live in Ilia, is an elite. Now, I want to note here, because the narrative plays with this a little bit and like reveals this steadily over time, but the elites are subdivided into, I guess, like normal elites and mundanes. So this was very confusing to me. I don't know about you, Jay, but I will say Cassandra Clare did not invent the term mundane. But when I hear the term mundane in a fantasy realm, I instantly assume muggle. I instantly assume no magical powers. I am thinking like derived from mundo, an association with the physical world, as opposed to the spiritual world that would create these powers. But no,
Yeah,
Jay.
I'm thinking boring.
Right.
Like they have uninteresting powers at most, if that.
Lauren means mundane as in boring and pedestrian. So they created a class of people around who had the boring powers. But
But like what gets classified as boring feels less than arbitrary. Like
it's purely qualitative. It is just I guess King Daddy also like categorized, and there are dozens of powers. Anyone could get like any number of powers. We don't get them all defined, but I do remember the word dozens being used. So
and we keep getting introduced to new ones up until like the last 20 pages of the book.
right.
So you can totally forget like the novel ever doing anything interesting with like you knowing what the powers are and then like the characters finding new ways to iterate on their uses or something like that. Whenever the book tries to surprise you or wants to surprise you, what it's going to do is just like invent a new power that all the characters knew about the whole time but has never been brought up before.
Exactly. So yeah, here we have this city-state, which is mostly slums, full of magical people, further subdivided into whether or not their powers are boring, and the people who are ordinaries, if new ordinaries are discovered, I guess, I don't know, this could be something I missed, but I guess people could be born ordinary, even if they are born from magical people, but ordinaries are supposed to be completely killed off or run off into the Scorches, which is this desert, which has these other city-states that will accept ordinaries, but King Daddy is just like, no ordinaries in my kingdom.
If anyone's keeping track, this is like maybe the third TikTok book that plays around with ethnic cleansing as a major plot beat and narrative element.
At least the third. So, yikes. Our book opens up in a cold open in Loot Alley. It's just the stupidest name in the world to me. I remember texting Jay about this because I was like, is the name of the street actually Loot Alley, or did like it get that name because of its reputation? Is there like a literal sign on the street that says Loot Alley? It's like Crime Alley in Batman. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, I assumed it was colloquial, but it is on the map, so maybe it is called Loot Alley. Maybe the whole slum is called Loot Alley.
Right. Named after famous philanthropist John Loot, having nothing to do with the backstory. This is just where brigands hang out. So we open on our hero, Peyton Gray, Paedyn Gray, in a chimney. Remember this, dear listener. She is shimmied up a chimney with sticky rolls in her pocket that she has stolen from a local baker, and she is being pursued by Imperial guards who are flashes. And if you can't
You might
guess,
say that she's one jump ahead of the bread line, one swing ahead of the sword. She steals only what she can afford, and that's everything.
right? So if you're confused about what flashes are, take 2 seconds to think about it. They run really fast, so she's super skilled at avoiding people with magical powers. So I'm sorry, Alex. I take back everything I said about Dora the Explorer Spanish.
Yeah.
I would kill for these people to be called like rapidos or something like that is not just like the first thing you think about. At least Spanish was like an extra step.
I don't know where Lauren Roberts gets off thinking that, like, in this book that has just introduced superpowers, the first one that you introduce can be called a Flash, which, by the way, is the name of an existing superhero. So, like, it's making the worst possible first impression as far as that bit of world building goes.
It's really bad. So, what's there to say about our dear protagonist, Peyton Gray? So this is in first person, present tense, which is going to be to the novel's detriment over time. I'm not against it normally, but the way she plays with point of views here, it will become a problem. But
Plays with point of views is a very diplomatic MFAE way of putting it, but you know what? I'll allow it.
so she has silver hair and the bluest eyes, the most blue eyes you've ever seen in the world. They're ocean eyes, a character will come to say, which I don't think Billie Eilish invented that, just like I don't think Cassandra Clare invented the word mundane, but like I couldn't stop thinking about the song.
I couldn't stop thinking about emerald orbs.
So Peyton Gray is an ordinary. So she, by all rights, should have been murdered or sent into the desert forever ago. She used to live in this affluent place with her father, who wasn't an ordinary. He was a mundane. Is healing a mundane power, or is it an elite power?
I think it's a mundane power, because I think the only ones that get classified as elite are at one point called capital O offensives and capital D defensives, which I don't really know what falls into that, because basically any power could be used for either of those.
Right.
But I feel like they say that at one point.
Okay,
So
sure. So her father married an ordinary, and that is why that Peyton was born as an ordinary. And her father knew that one day this would come back to bite them, and trained her psych style to be very observant. She doesn't have these magical powers, but she does have this preternatural, quote unquote, ability to read social cues and notice small details in a nebulous way. And it, again, it is just like the show Psych. I've seen it compared to Sherlock as well. Never seen Sherlock, but maybe he's also very observant like that. That's where the connection comes from there.
I guess I feel like the media comparison there is so unnecessary, because she's literally just cold reading people. Like, psychics do this in the real world all the time. Like,
Right.
that is how they make their money. There's industries built on it. Like, and this is getting ahead of ourselves, but the idea that she's the only person in the world who would have come up with this grift is totally unbelievable to me.
Totally.
But yeah,
crazy,
she's just a cold reader, essentially, and she tricks people into thinking that she's psychic by doing that.
And we hear that psychics are rare, but like, how rare are they that there's no point of reference for how a psychic power is supposed to work? Because like, she just like says stuff that sounds made up off the cuff, and people accept it because, oh, I've never seen a psychic before.
I don't know. I mean, it has only been 30 years, so maybe it's possible that most people haven't met every single power yet and like don't really have a good sense of what they can do.
I guess.
Because if she's, I mean, it sounds like Peyton is probably the first generation to be born since the plagues like wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like people who are in her cohort just don't know what psychics can do. But I don't know, it does feel like something that at least needs to be explained better.
Yeah. So here she is. She's ordinary. She has silver hair. She has pretty blue eyes. And there's this like coy little thing where she's like, oh, is this blood or is this honey from a sticky roll? Which, like, I don't know why she did that, but she escapes the guards. She shimmies down her little chimney and she goes back to the slum that she lives in, where she meets up with her dear friend who is a seamstress named Adina. What can we say about Adina?
I don't think we can say anything about Adina except that she's just like cheery.
She's cheery, she likes sewing, and she likes sweet rolls.
She's just like me for real.
So yeah, so they lived this like little life. Literally, Peyton had bumped into her in this meet cute like 6 years ago, and that's how they started hanging out with each other. They live in a trash fort in the slums.
It's like conspicuously cottagecore, this trash fort. Like they are
Cottagecore
ostensibly in
trash fort.
abject poverty, but like also they're both totally fine. Like they're just chilling.
Yeah,
The trash is just like an aesthetic.
the trash is so yeah, so their whole dynamic is Peyton will pickpocket and swindle, and Adina will sew and sell her wares, and they just live this kind of, it is kind of idyllic, this cottagecore little life they have in the garbage. But that's our heroes right now. The reason that Peyton, I forgot to mention, lives in the slums versus the opulence that she came from is it was eventually found out that her father had married an ordinary. The narrative hides all of these details into weird places, so this is peppered in, but there's no reason to hide this from you. Her father was killed by the king for harboring an ordinary, and somehow Peyton was able to escape from this like execution, and now she just lives off in the street. I don't think there's anything else to that backstory. So then we switch, and need I remind you, we are in first person POV. We switch to Kai Azar, our sexy, brooding prince of the book. And he's sparring with his half brother, half naked with his half brother in the arena. They're just using powers on each other and fighting with swords. They are always highlighted as being shirtless. They love being shirtless. We know every time they are not wearing a shirt. It is crazy.
You would think that if it was so important that they were shirtless, we would like get some insight into what the, I don't know, narrator appreciates about that. But it seems like
No.
just the fact that they are shirtless is itself titillating enough. I guess that's what happens when you're 12. But it is what it is.
Right. So it's Kai and Kit. They're half brothers, but they're both princes. Kit is the firstborn son. He is the heir. He is going to be the king. Kai is the second-born son, who is the child of King Daddy's second wife, who he married after the first one died in childbirth. So they're half brothers, but there's no bad blood there. But Kai is being raised to be the enforcer, which is like the hand of the king, the judge, jury, and executioner. He goes out and he does the dirty work, while the actual king does the diplomacy and stuff like that. If you've ever looked into early Hungarian history, it's very similar to that diarchy post Arpad, but I don't think that is what Lauren Roberts was invoking when she was writing this book. Just thought I'd tell you that.
You don't think that she was invoking niche Hungarian history?
I
You think that she was just making up bullshit?
I don't think the Hungarians invented diarchies, but I do think they did it the coolest way possible by having a spiritual diplomatic king and a war king.
That is pretty cool.
Right?
Tag yourself. Are you Punch King or are you Paperwork King?
Anyways, they're shirtless, they're fighting, they have this like quote unquote adoptive brother, Jax, who's also there. He's like a little kid, basically. He's like 14, they're 18 or whatever. He's just a little bit younger than everyone. And they're all fighting, and Kit's like, as you know, Kai, we are training you for the inciting incident trials. And Kai is like, yes, I do know that. I want to train even harder. And so this happens. They're shirtless, they're fighting, they're being boys, and then there's this anime girl laugh, and then this girl comes up and she's like, oh, the inciting incident trials. As you know, I am the daughter of a general, so I will be winning them. So, like,
And they both roll their eyes and they're like, oh, not bitchy
Right,
Blair.
right. Her name is Blair. She is a telly, short for telekinetic, and she will always, even like Peyton, in terms of dramatic irony, is never told to call her bitchy Blair by Kai, but Peyton will also start to call her bitchy Blair. So I guess this is just her cognomen imparted upon her by the state. She isn't even that bitchy.
No.
Like, all things considered, like, she is just like a kind of competitive girl. So like,
She's as flat as the rest of them.
right? So she's just, so they have this little dynamic. It's ridiculous.
We're supposed to hate her because she's a girl who's not the main girl, and she ostensibly has some interest in one or both of the love interests. So it's like we have to hate her because like she's competing with the main girl for the boys, and like we don't like that because we like the main girl. It's just what you were saying about Crown of Starlight, basically, where it's just like we need to have like a woman to dislike for no reason at all.
no
But it's
reason.
the same trope.
It's crazy. So they fight some more, whatever. The only other detail that I think is important here is Kai gets along really well with the serving staff. So that's supposed to be like a green flag for us. It's the classic, like, take him to a restaurant to make sure that he's not rude to the waiter thing. And, it kind of works, whatever. Kai gets along with the servants. He's a cute boy that loves being shirtless. So is Kit. Jax is a little bit too young for us, but he's still a cute boy, but not in a romantic way.
So Kai's power, I actually think this is really cool. I thought I was going to hate it, but I ended up liking it a lot. I'll talk more about it later, but I do think Kai's power is neat. Basically, he can absorb the power of any nearby person and deploy it to like the best of his ability. So any power that he's absorbed previously, he's more experienced using and can use more effectively. And he can also switch between powers in his vicinity. So he's kind of like Kirby, if Kirby could like instantly spit out and reabsorb a different power. And Kirby was being controlled by a player who is more or less familiar with different powers. So it's kind of like the metaphor is breaking down. He's basically Kirby. And I think that's neat.
For your benefit, I would imagine Kai as Kirby for the rest of this book, and it will be more entertaining than the book that me and Jay read. Kit's power, he's a dual, D-U-A-L. He has fire and water powers?
I think so.
Or is it ice? I can't remember.
He does control a fountain at one point.
Okay, whatever. And then Jax is a blink, which means he can teleport to anything in the radius that he can see or whatever. So those are their powers. Like I said, Bitchy Blair is a telly, so she can throw things with certain degrees of accuracy. So we're back over to Pei. She is on a little pickpocketing streak. She like does some like psych intuition where this guy creeps on her, this Imperial guard, and she's like, I deduced that there is a tan line of the ring that he used to have on his wedding ring finger. That means you're divorced. And then she's like, oh, the ring is still on his other finger, so he's still holding on. And she's like, you want her back, don't you? And you cheated on her. And the guy's like, oh my god, you're a witch. I can't believe you have such amazing magical powers. I'll get more into this in the suggestions, but I was kind of picturing the society as like deeply, deeply vapid. So the first person that comes around who can like read social cues and notice things is like a psychic.
We'll see if you can convince me later, but this annoyed the shit out of me. I
Really?
hate this kind of stuff. I really hate it when a character just jumps to conclusions and then the novel bends itself over backwards to like make them correct. Because it's equally conceivable that like he took the ring off because he was cheating and then the ring that's on his other finger is just a different ring. Like there's every chance that that could also have been the case. But because the novel wants us to think of her as cool, she's always right when she does this, every single time.
I see where you're coming from. I understand that it is a contrivance, but this sells Peyton as an underdog better than Lightlark sold Isla as an underdog. So like, I guess working on that scale, I was really happy with it. Maybe objectively it is contrived. So like, it isn't that good, but this is better than hiding rose petals up your sleeve, literally, so that when you draw blood, you can sprinkle some rose petals on it and say, ooh, look, I did that. Like, this is at least more work than that. So that's where we're at here.
Yeah. Yeah, it is cooler than that. I think it makes sense for Peyton to pull it off flawlessly the first time just to establish that that's how her powers work. I think maybe I would feel differently if she actually had been wrong once or twice, because then that could have also increased tension where like a character could have been like, actually, you're not reading me right. Like, are you really psychic? But anyway,
Yeah,
the
so
summary.
there's more opportunity there, but she demonstrates her psychic powers, but she is actually observant because she notices that the Imperial Guard rotation is 2 people short. More on that later. But anyway, she goes on a pickpocketing run, and she pickpockets this guy, and reader, listener, friends, Romans, countrymen, please comment what you would do if this happened to you. But what Peyton does is she pickpockets this guy. She notices there's this paper in his pocket, and she pulls it out, and it's a note that says, "Hey, meet at this address." And the address is literally the house that she grew up in. So, what would you do if you noticed that some secret meeting was happening in your childhood home? Would you care? Would you think about it more than once? Would you go to the house immediately to see what's going on over there? What do you think you would do, Jay?
I think I would probably forget about it immediately and wait until somebody from the secret meeting came to get me physically at a later point and said, "Hey, that was for you, dog. Do you want to come check out what that was about?"
Right.
And then I would say, "Oh, yeah, sure, thanks. Let's do that."
That's great, because that's exactly what happens. She forgets about it immediately, dicks around in the slums some more. She comes across this other rich man who is so big and so sexy, and she pickpockets him too, taking just enough coin for him to hopefully not notice. And then they have this little flirt scene where she's like, you're so handsome and sexy. I don't even remember what they flirt about. I think it's just like they look at each other.
It's because she
and notice that
pretended
they're
to
sexy.
trip into him.
Well, yeah, but like, what does it just like? Oh, you're cute, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what all their flirting is like until the very end.
Right. So, so, so she pickpockets him. He's so sexy, and then they break, and then the rich man gets attacked by this group of brigands. And then we switch back into Kai's point of view. But not only do we switch back to Kai's point of view, we go into the past. This is directly after the first Kai chapter, but it's before the beginning of the adjacent Peyton chapter. If you're following this amazing chronology. So
Extremely jarring shit.
So King Daddy summons Kai to his meeting room, and he's like, "Hello, son. We found an ordinary hiding out in the slums in Loot Alley, so you have to go kill it." So Kai goes to the slums and does this little like, "Show me your ordinary that you're hiding, filthy people," or whatever. He finds that this mundane family is hiding this ordinary girl, like literally a girl, like she's, I think, 7 or 9. They've taken in as their own child. And he's like, "You need to go to the Scorches, and the ordinary must be killed." But because this was lifted directly from Save the Cat on the chapter on anti-heroes, we know that Kai won't go directly all the way and kill the 7-year-old child. So what he does is he steals the flash power of one of his guards, super runs off into the desert with this child in hand, frees her, and he's like, "Hey, go catch up with your family. I'm not going to kill you, but I will force you and your family to march like Lot and his wife through the desert, and you will almost surely die."
Yeah, isn't that awesome how it's like it plays this game with you where it's like, oh, he's gonna kill this child, and then it's like, oh no, he actually has some mercy, but then he confirms to the reader like, yeah, they're still gonna die out there. So it's like, wait a second, is he supposed to be merciful or not?
Again, it shows a level of humanity that, you don't see.
Grimshaw Malvere
Grimshaw Malvere would never. He would never. But like, at least we
Yeah.
have something. Kai is traumatized. He's been raised in this society. He's like Zuko, you know, like he doesn't know any other life, and he's trying to pursue the affection of this crazy man, King Daddy. But he still has this sliver of humanity in him that we're going to see grow and grow over time. That's like, I like it, you know, like. I know that it's still shitty and he still technically killed those people, but like we have had anti-heroes in the zeitgeist for decades now. And like if anti-heroes aren't good, then why is Tony Soprano literally me?
So wait, does that take us then to the next day where then we see him get mugged by Peyton from his
Yes.
point of view and then
Yes.
assaulted from his point of view and then
Yes.
Peyton saves him in her point of view?
Yes.
Is that how it goes?
That's exactly how it goes, Jay. You're a genius. You're a genius.
Oh, wow,
You've tracked this intricate plotting that Lauren has done. So yes,
I feel like I just sight read a piece of music right there. I was like, ooh, ooh, hitting all the notes.
we see the exact same exchange between Peyton and Kai, but from Kai's perspective, which is completely untransformative because they're both attracted to each other. So we don't learn anything other than Kai is also attracted to her.
And neither of them knows who the assailants are.
Right.
So like we get a second instance of someone being like, who the
is
fuck are
this?
these people beating up this guy?
And then but don't worry, guys, we go back to Peyton's perspective, and then Peyton fights the people,
Yeah.
and there's a guy called a silencer in there, and silencers can suppress magical powers, and I think like also like physically like discombobulate people, because like Kai is supposed to be like a strong dude but acted like he was just completely out of depth, or I guess he was like outnumbered or something. But Peyton's really good at like fighting people and being scrappy on the street, so she saves him. And I won't get into this until later, but she does deliberate with herself whether or not to actually help him, knowing that he's this noble person, knowing that he had done something bad in the desert earlier and that he felt guilty about it. She was like, maybe I shouldn't save him. But then seeing him helpless reminds her of her father. And that's when she decides to step in and defend him from these muggers. So she dispatches all of these people. One of the silencers gets captured, and Peyton saves the day, but she can't. She just runs off because she's mysterious and she's not supposed to be like in the public eye.
I actually didn't think of this on first reading, but I love that the first person that he reminds her of is her dad. That's totally untroubling and very normal to me.
I have a lot to say about that in the future. So somehow, and again, this is another like a game that we're going to be playing throughout this summary, and we've already been playing it, but I haven't named it yet. Is Andrew stupid, or is this like actually missed by the plot? Because somehow it gets out that one, that she did this, two, that her name is Peyton Gray. Somehow she looks out and sees the new inciting incident. They're called the Purging Trials, but I'm going to be calling them the Inciting Incident Trials because I think that's funnier. The new roster for the trials has come up, and these are they're the Hunger Games. They are literally the Hunger Games. There is no difference whatsoever, but the constituents get voted into it.
Yeah, it's like the Hunger Games meets the Triwizard Tournament, because it's like split up into separate events. But we'll get into that.
This is another point I wanted to draw a reference to Lightlark in, because I don't even remember what it was called. The Centennial. In the Centennial, I recall saying, it doesn't make any sense why things are happening in the order that they are. Here, it makes perfect sense. You know, this can be a deadly game, but it doesn't have to be. We don't have to think about, hey, has an entire race of people been wiped off of the planet because of this deadly game? But like, no, this is just like a gladiatorial fight, or not even a gladiatorial fight. It's just like, I guess the Triwizard Tournament is a good comparison, because you don't have to die. You can, but
yeah,
you know. So, and then there's
every
all these...
year some people do die, but the challenges change a little bit. So like sometimes it's more combat focused, sometimes it's not.
And there's all these balls that go on, but unlike in Lightlark where they were just like, oh, it's day 50, time for the ball. Here, they're like, oh, we have to schmooze with our competitors and potential sponsors, and none of this pays off, but it has an on-text reason for existing that is on par with my idea of the orb in Lightlark. So already we are working with a better book.
The framing device for the quote-unquote deadly game is a lot more internally consistent.
It is different than the Hunger Games. I'll give it that. It is very might makes right in that this is almost like a positive thing for the participants. Like, imagine if the Hunger Games was only populated by people from District 1 and 2. Like, people who had been raised to do this, people who see the games as like a fun thing. So I'm interested. Like, I think everything in here is very stupid, but I am interested in these games. And I'm playing with my book right now because I wanted to read off all of the participants because I don't want to come back later and have to recontextualize something. So this is your introduction to all of the characters by name who we will care about. So there's Kai Azer, who we have just gotten to know, Andrea Voss, who will be called Andy for the rest of the book, which is very weird for me being named Andrew. There's Jax Shields,
who will sometimes be called Jay, which is
right.
confusing to me.
So there's an Andy and a Jay. So then there's Blair Archer, Ace Elway, Braxton Hale, Hera Colt, and Sadie Knox. So
are you going to talk about the orthography?
I'm going to talk about the orthography, Jay, because I mentioned in Fourth Wing that I am guilty of a certain level of caucasity that affects my cultural understanding. But once again, I must ask you, in the bowels of the God Stars, where are these people from? What the hell is Braxton Hale and Andrea Voss and Kai Azer? None of these things sound like they came from the same continent.
Jeez, Andrew, you can't just ask a fictional character where they're originally from. Come on,
Where's
now.
where's your family from, Kai?
I don't know. I was kind of grasping around for any kind of names that felt like they were from the same heritage so that I would have an idea of like which language was meant to be like our quote unquote default language and which ones were meant to be like languages that come from other regions.
What is going on? What is going on, basically?
It's what happens when you have the first draft names still in the book, honestly. It's like, it's just a bunch of names that you came up with because you thought they sounded like names, and maybe they were, I don't know, named after the people who sit next to you in your 7th grade civics class.
Right, where you're daydreaming about writing this book. I bet she knows someone named Blair, and I bet they don't like each other very much. Peyton is called the Silver Savior, and I almost forgot to mention it because it's only relevant in like the first fourth of the book. I don't think they even use the word Silver Savior towards the end, but just like she becomes a folk hero, and she is elected into these trials by someone, some constituent voting body.
I think they allege later in the book that the king put his hand on the scales there to make sure she was in because he wanted her dead. But I'm not totally sure what the order of events was on that.
That sounds right. But in the moment, I think they explain it off as like, oh, the slums people voted me as their representative or something like that. Anyways, she has to leave Adina behind and gets taken to the castle, which is, in my head, made out of extruded plastic from the Barbie Dreamhouse set that Lauren hasn't thrown away yet. I mean, she is in middle school, so she doesn't play with Barbies, but they're just in her closet. Like, it's just there, so she sees it all the time, and she has fresh memories of playing with it.
When, like, the younger kids from church come over on Sunday afternoons, they still bust it out from time to time, you know, and she, like, kind of humors them with it.
Yeah. What I mean to say is this is a castle you have seen before. Its architecture is nebulous. Its layout is nebulous. It just is laid out the way that you need it to be for the scene that it's in. There's also the bowl, capital T, capital B, the bowl, which is the arena that the trials are alleged to be taken place in. You will note that 2/3 of the trial will not take place in that, but more on that later. So we meet our new characters, all of the horrible, horrible named characters that we have been alluding to earlier that come from different places, as well as a nice Imperial named Lenny. Because presumably last year for summer homework, Lauren had to read Of Mice and Men and thought that character name was very good.
I was thinking she had maybe just played like New Super Mario Brothers Wii and got inspired by the Koopalings, but to each their own, I guess.
To each their own. Whichever one you think she's invoking, whether it's a timeless classic or Of Mice and Men, I will let you make that decision for yourself. So,
please put your thoughts in the comments below.
Right. So she gets also a maid named Ellie. Now, listeners and also Jay, I invite you to wonder aloud, what was the name of Isla's handmaiden in Lightlark?
Emma?
Ella. Very close.
Oh, damn.
So like, I'm not like alleging anything, but it's like, it's funny. Like, what about the name L blank is invoking of a handmaiden to you people?
I think the bracketing of vowels on the either side of some kind of consonant feels very soft, and it feels very maidenly.
I guess, but like Ella to me is like a child's name. I'm sorry if you're listening to this and your name is Ella. Ellie too. Like I don't know why this is like a thing. I'm not saying that like Lauren ripped off Alex Astor here, but I thought it was really weird. For no reason, literally for no reason, she is locked in that room for 2 days with no contact to the outside world until Kit comes in. And Kit's like, ooh, I want to meet the beautiful girl who saved my brother. And okay. Then they have like a dinner and they meet all the characters and Kai comes back and they just like all ogle each other. It's so weird. Like we know instantly that Kit is not like the end game like person who will be with Peyton, but there's all of this like time dedicated to them flirting with each other and like him being in competition with Kai. It's crazy to me.
It's set up in a way that it's unmistakable that he is not a viable love interest, but then the middle of the book acts like it's going to be a love triangle, but then at the end of the book, it ends the exact way you would think it is, where he is not a viable love interest. So it's like, What was even the point of pretending when nobody was fooled to begin with? Because at the outset, you didn't set it up that way. They all have dinner?
They all have dinner. That's exactly as exciting as you think it is. Kai shows up and he's like, remember me? And that's it.
Yeah, they flirt fight a little, but it's like it's not flirting, because it's at this point, at least for me, that I was starting to think like, oh, Lauren thinks that when two people are mean to each other, that means they're flirting.
I didn't like it, but I could vibe with the romance between Kai and Peyton. So maybe that is kind of just like a are the straights okay thing. But anyways, they do have the sparring in the yard, and bitchy Blair throws a knife at Peyton, which nicks her on the ear, drawing blood, which maybe that happened to her in her softball team. You know, when you were like practicing passing, if someone wanted to bully you, when you weren't their partner, they would throw the ball at you really hard. Maybe that's where she's drawing that from. But here's the thing. She gets blood, right? And she has silver hair. So Kai's like, wait, I don't want any blood in your silver hair. And there is this long, drawn out sequence where Kai braids her pretty silver hair. And Peyton's all like, oh, wow, he's so good at it. I wonder how he got so good at it. And I was like, dead girlfriend and or dead sister. I'm ready for that backstory to drop. And then we got nothing. To this point, I have no idea why Kai is so good at braiding hair. Jay, did I miss something?
Not that I saw. I think he just alluded to like something happening and then the book forgot.
No, literally.
But, you know, it's okay. This is a first draft. That happens in a first draft. That's the kind of thing you can cut or figure out later.
This has not been published with a Big Four publisher, so we have a lot of time to correct these small mistakes.
That's exactly why you come to a critique group like the St. Balthasar University English Club. Like and subscribe.
So there's just like, we will never find out. I don't know why this bothers me more than anything else in the book, but this is legitimately like the one thing that continues to bother me to this day. Why is Kai so good at braiding hair? Maybe it just is like, oh, I've had many lovers, so like I'm so good at braiding hair from that, but like that's not what the allusion was to. I literally thought he would be like, I used to have a sister, but she died in my dramatic backstory.
I had a sister, but she was ordinary, and so I had to
Right.
send her into the desert.
Anything. Literally anything. I don't understand. We'll never find out. Okay.
There was something else that bothered me in this scene that's, I don't know, maybe less consequential, but like there's so much training happening in it, and like so many people are fighting with weapons. Like so many people who have superpowers are still choosing to use swords and stuff, and they will continue to do so throughout the book. And it's like I don't really get why they're just using swords, or like why there aren't like different weapons that are built to like suit the different characters' powers, right? Like,
Because that would require thought.
yeah, I mean that is the answer, but like in universe it seems like strange.
Well, Brawnies don't have anything ethereal to use. They would have to just swing a sword better than other people, you know? I think Braxton's a Brawny because they both start with B.
Yeah, but like some of these characters can like set themselves on fire, so like why don't they have like, I don't know, like why don't they hold metal or something so then they can like hit people with hot metal?
I have no idea.
Or I don't know, like there's like those people that can create plants or like can grow plants really fast. So like wouldn't it make more sense for them to carry like, I don't know, like a bunch of seeds in pouches, and then like maybe some things to put the seeds in if like there's not fertile soil around? Or I don't know. It's doubly irritating to me because it seems like it'd be the kind of thing that would be fun to world build about.
Right.
It's not like trying to like nail down the exact aesthetic of like your castle and what kind of stone it's built out of. This is like, what are cool power implementations that my anime characters can have, like my OCs can use when they're fighting each other on the schoolyard. I mean, in the castle grounds. So like, it's weird that she didn't put in the effort to do it.
You could have done anything, and you did this.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. You could have done anything in the planet, and here we are. So before the trials begin in earnest, there needs to be one ball to begin this whole process. The boys have to ask the girls, and then Kit, the prince, invites Peyton to go to the ball with her. Ooh, this is supposed to be like, oh, he's a really cute boy, but I think there's something about his eyes that Peyton doesn't like. Do you want to talk about that, Jay? Because you mentioned how often that came up.
Oh, yeah. There was something about his eyes. I think it might be that they remind Peyton of, like, the evil king, or that, like, he kind of looks like his dad, who's the king who's evil. Or
Right.
maybe that, like, uncannily he resembles one of his parents. I think probably his father, who's, like, the king, and he's, like, not a nice guy. Or something like that. Something about
like
how his eyes look like, who was it? It was the king, and the king is evil, and that makes Peyton uncomfortable.
Right.
Vis-a-vis when she looks at Kit, she becomes uncomfortable because his eyes look like the evil guy's eyes.
Right.
And we don't like him.
We don't like him because he killed her father.
Was that right? Did that sound right to you?
That sounds so correct to me. I don't even want to litigate that further because it's just, there's so much eye stuff and so much everything stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention, Kai has dimples. I meant to take a count, but it has to be in the 50s at least, the amount of time that dimples are mentioned, because this is a 500-page book. Divide that by golly gee drillion mentions of Kai. Dimples have to follow. So 50 is my comfortable estimation.
That seems like a very cozy number. We forgot to mention, during the ball, or right before the ball, Peyton's like, oh, I need a dress, and I don't want to, like, use one of the ones that's being provided for me, so can I, like, call my friend from home to come live in the castle with me and she can make all my dresses? And somehow everyone's okay with this, and so from then on, like, Adina makes the dresses for her and is, like, around the castle. Hugely stakes lowering, because, like, isn't this supposed to be, like, imprisonment until the trials are over for Peyton? Like, can anybody just have their best friend come crash with them?
So not only is everyone okay with it, but Peyton waits until this point to ask about it. She knew balls were a part of this. Maybe she would think like, hey, my friend is a tailor. She's really good at making dresses. before I go to this ball, hey, Lenny, do you mind sneaking Adina in with me? And Lenny would be like, oh, yeah, sure, man. I don't care. I just want to pet rabbits. So, yeah, there's the ball. It was probably. Okay, so if you get perfect attendance at the middle school, you go to the attend dance. And this is like a big deal for like guys to ask girls to go to the attend dance. You're supposed to wear green because the color of Ilya is green, but Peyton wears silver. Ooh, that's so scandalous. She's just like her hair, and bitchy Blair is like, oh, do you know that green is the color of Ilya? And Peyton's like, I don't care because I'm the main character, so I get to be unique. And then they dance a lot, and it's really fun.
And Blair's like, oh, how gauche. Surely I will defeat you in the trials, you insolent slummer.
Baka. So she realizes in this ball that one of the servants is the guy that she pickpocketed, you know, the one that had the note with her home address.
Her address. It's just her IP address.
Is handing out champagne, and she's just like, huh, that's weird. This lead that she has still not followed up on at any point. But then Jay, it's okay because she doesn't have to think about it. There's an explosion. And then there's this fight, which is surely the work of the resistance. We've had an allusion to this from King Daddy before, but there is a capital R resistance coming up with all of these ordinaries who are still in the kingdom of Ilya. They have like sympathizers who are elites so hold on. There are elites that are not mundane, that are also treated like ordinaries because they have like mind control powers, or they're quote unquote fatals, which I guess means their superpower is killing you. Like anyone who has like broken magic powers, they were also exterminated. So this resistance is the coalition of those elites and the ordinaries. And this is their first strike.
I believe they say that there's 4 fatal types. One of them is the mind control, one of them is the silencers. I think there's a killing one, and then there's one that I don't remember, and I'm not going to look it up because it doesn't come up again. But they also mentioned that the King Daddy, keeps 1 on retainer each. So,
Right.
like, other than his personal stable of, like, fatals, all the others have allegedly been genocided.
Allegedly.
But there's gonna be some really big like stakes of the kingdom is on the line type fights later, where the king's like fatals that you would think he would have like as bodyguards for just such an occasion like will not show up. So I don't know what they're doing or like what the deal is. Maybe there's going to be a spin-off novel where they're off adventuring when the kingdom's being destroyed, but they're not around, but they do exist.
There is a spin-off about Adina. Did I tell you that?
No, you didn't.
So there is a companion novel that is contemporaneous to Powerless called Powerful, that is from Adina's perspective. And I neglected to read it. I meant to, but the timeline got all messed up, so I couldn't do it.
Is she like doing stuff this whole time?
According to that book, I don't know. I haven't read it, so maybe we'll do Powerful one day to augment this. I don't know.
We'll add to the list.
So yeah, the explosion, there's a fight, there's a skirmish. This is where Kai comes to shine because he is the militaristic leader, the enforcer, the future enforcer, I mean. So this is his bread and butter. He's like commanding people, and Kit wants to join the fight too, but he's too important because he's the prince. So him and Peyton, they get pulled away to a safe room. So anyways, they get that sorted out. They just like kill all the insurgents, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, they surmise that it was like a terrorist attack that was designed purely to, I don't know, cause terror. Like, they couldn't possibly have had any deeper motives than that because they didn't send enough people in, and all the resistance people that did go in were killed. So I guess it was like a suicide mission just to disrupt the trials.
So, okay, they get that sorted out. That's it. There's some angst, I think, but it really doesn't matter. Then the first trial starts. Woo! Yay!
Yay! Woohoo!
Everyone wakes up in the middle of a forest with nothing but the clothes they have on and a leather band. You'll notice that this does not take place in the bowl, but this is supposed to be a different kind of trials because this is the first time that a future enforcer has ever taken part in the trials. Something we neglected to mention was this like straight out of the Hunger Games interview montage where we learn all of our like club members, antagonists, people who will be in these trials and their powers. And then Peyton does some like cold reads of the crowd and everyone's like, oh wow, she has like magical powers. That's so amazing. But like there's literally a sequence in the Hunger Games that is just like this, where we meet each of our people one by one and they tell them what their deal is. But the gimmick here is that they get to use their powers. So the point of these interviews and the point of the ball as well is to get like sponsors, just like in the Hunger Games. So keep that in mind when I tell you that this ridiculous segment is just like 3 or 4 chapters that are just the Hunger Games. The first book, they are in the woods trying to survive with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and occasionally, because of their performance in the interviews or whatever, there will be tin cans of soothing poultices or food or weapons dropped in by some nebulous means. So that starts. I don't know.
Yeah, we also learn because I think one of the characters, I think it might be Kai even, like stumbles across a stream that's like clearly not naturally formed, and he says it's the work of hydros, which is our first time encountering that power, which I guess means that there is a power that's just creating water endlessly, which we can talk about the power scaling of these later, but that feels really broken potentially.
It's awful.
Yeah, so it is the Hunger Games, and they're wandering around, and some of them fight each other.
That's it.
That's it.
There's also these people called sights whose power is to record and project the things that they're seeing, because this is just the Hunger Games and there's no audience and we can't have cameras because it's like not medieval, but like 1800s level technology where electricity is kind of a novelty, and they're just gonna like record what's going on. So know that they're in like the corners here and there and get mentioned, but they never do anything super important. So
except Andrew, except they could have cameras, because Lauren Roberts introduced a plot element earlier in the book that she completely forgot about that would have made cameras totally viable within the magic system. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
No, I actually have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Okay. Silencers, right? The people that are capable of stopping another person's powers from working.
Yes.
It is established that there is a substance called mute that is made when a type of magic user called a scholar transmits a person's power from their body into an object. So that's how they used silencers to create mute, which the walls of the Colosseum are coded in so that people in the stands can't interfere with the magic that may or may not be happening in the actual like Colosseum battlegrounds. You would think that they could coat the trees with, I don't know, magic eyeball juice, and then the trees could watch. Or even they could imbue some floating object with the site's power, and then they could literally have like flying cameras follow people around. Like there's a precedent for it already. It's literally right there.
I did forget entirely about mute, and I didn't realize that could be extrapolated to other powers. So I guess I'm still on Lauren's wavelength here, but that's genius. That because it is so awkward to imagine just little people scurrying around while all of this is happening. But anyways,
little Keebler elves. It's
little
like the
Keebler
little Noah
elves!
villagers. They're just running around in the woods.
Hey, it's better than dealing with dinosaurs.
It's a living.
I don't really want to get too into detail here. Kai gets wounded, Peyton gets wounded. They both take turns healing each other and dramatically holding each other and saying, "Who did this to you?" There's fighting with some of the minor characters. There's this weird flirty moment where Peyton wakes up while Kai is rubbing one of those soothing poultices into her stomach and she slaps him. They're attacked by wolves at one point. Lather, rinse, repeat ad nauseum.
Yeah, they kind of each get a rival, sort of. Like, aside from Blair, who's pretty clearly, like, the main antagonist among the Royal Kids, Peyton ends up fighting Ace, who's, like, a guy who can create illusions, and then Kai ends up fighting Braxton, who, as we said, is the brawny, which just means he's really strong. And they will continue to squabble in the other trials.
Right. So there's this girl, Sadie, who has like shadow clone powers. She ambushes them while they are dancing with each other to no music, asking each other what their favorite color is. I'm so serious. That is literally what is happening on the page. And then these shadow clone jutsu people come up and like there's a skirmish. It's ridiculous. Kai manages to kill her. Sadie, that is, and then he buries her and puts flowers on top, and Peyton learns that he does this because there's like pollen on his fingers, which I feel like I don't know if that really makes sense, but it just goes to show you that Kai may be not so bad after all. He's a monster, but he still has a heart.
Wow. I don't even have anything funny to say about it. I'm sorry. It's really hard. This novel just beats you down with how uninterested it is in its own world. Like, it's hard. It's so hard to conjure the will to, like, joke about it even. Because he does just brutally murder this girl, and then he's like, I didn't mean to, honest. And then, like, we're supposed to think of him as the good guy because he had the courtesy to bury her? Like, he killed her.
Well, she was gonna kill them.
Yeah, but I don't know. She was probably cool, and he sucks.
Yeah, I don't know. So suddenly it's like, hey, we got to leave the forest now. They all show up in this clearing, all the characters, and they keep fighting. And there's this stupid skirmish. Kai accidentally wounds Jax, that little kid. It's all so dramatic. He steals like healing power in order to heal him. It's all like, oh, live, please. I can't bear this horrible shame.
I don't want to fight your power. I want to fight you. Just you.
Her piercing gaze never leaves mine as she says it, even as the other elites turn their attention towards us, finding this fight far more interesting than their training. So, you just want me? No powers?
Yes, I just want you.
She breathes, annoyed with me. My mouth twists into a crooked grin. I knew you wanted me, Gray. And with that little comment, a high kick comes flying towards my face.
This is like the second book, at least, written by some lady who definitely does not consume anime, where almost every single flirt scene is paced exactly like a shitty anime would pace it. How does that happen?
Babaka. So like we were saying, there's, what are they called? Sites? What are these stupid people called? Yeah, so there's sites recording all of this, and the crowd is just loving all of the drama. They're really shipping Kai and Peyton. So we're back in the castle for a brief lull. Kit takes Peyton to the palace gardens, and there's this like faux romantic scene. He's always like, you're always so honest with me, Peyton, so be honest with me. What do you think about all of this? And Peyton is just like, it sucks. And then Kit's just like, okay. And that is the scene. Did I miss anything?
It's so funny because Peyton is like, I think I should probably tell him that I'm not a big fan of ethnic cleansing. And then she does. And he's like, well, I think you might be a little bit extreme, but I respect that you're an individual with your own autonomous opinions.
Right.
And I'm going to stay pro-ethnic cleansing, actually, but we can still be friends and maybe kiss about it later, even.
Kiss about it later. So that's that scene. It is at this point, dear reader, that Peyton finally decides to go check out her old house, you know, the thing she's known about since her second chapter, and she sneaks off to Loot Alley. She opens the door to her old house, and Lenny, the Imperial Guard, is there.
Balancing on his little orb and throwing magic rings.
It's stupid. It's so stupid. And there's like a million people in this house. There's this guy, Callan, the de facto leader of the resistance. These are like the dignitaries of this movement. We meet so many people, but we will never see them again. There's maybe one other scene with like these resistance leaders, but we learn all of their names and who they are and little basic personality traits, but I will not tell you any of them because they don't matter. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, one of them flirts with her. Everyone's like, oh, being a sex pest is such a charming trait. I'm glad we keep him around. He makes everyone feel welcome and comfortable in our organization.
So they're like, I'm using my mind reader ability to know that you are true of heart. We need to strike a definitive blow against the elites. We need a way into the castle. If only there was a secret passageway or whatever. And scene. Then Peyton goes back to the palace and she talks to Kit and she's like, if only there was a secret passageway or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, super subtle, Peyton, but whatever.
And he's like, well, as luck would have it, there is, and I want to sneak out of the castle with you later.
Right, but not now, because they get interrupted by King Daddy, who is like, Peyton, you're stupid and ugly. Don't talk to me or my sons ever again. I hate you. And that's the scene. Then there's another ball. Then there is another freaking ball scene. I think she wears a red dress or is it a black dress? A red dress, right?
It's not a little black nothing dress?
No, the black nothing dress, that's the last one. I think this one is...
I'm sorry, I refuse to pay attention to dress colors until we get another dressing scene that's as good as Crown of Starlight's was. Until then, I abstain from all dress-related activities.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything close to Crown of Starlight in this book. So, whatever. She wears a dress. It's very pretty. I think it has a corset. Yeah, it does. Because it goes into the next scene. So, Kai is super angsty because she's like dancing with his brother or whatever. And she also like makes him feel like a monster because, I don't know, he's supposed to like not hang out with her because she's a dirty slumber or whatever.
They have a good consent moment. That's nice, I guess.
It's a very good consent moment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where it's like, there's like gonna be something between them, and then she's like, no, you're drunk. Let's not do anything. And then they don't. And
that's awesome. That's fantastic. That happens. Yeah. Peyton defends her boundaries very, very well.
I, for one, am glad that this is in the book because what it suggests to me is that the state of sex ed in 7th grade is actually maybe better than we thought. If this is the kind of thing that 12-year-olds are learning, then, I can't complain.
But then, I guess, I don't really know why, but Peyton has a panic attack about all of this. I guess it's because there's a big crowd and she's racked with guilt and Kai is drunk and trying to come on to her, but she has a panic attack. And it's caused by, and I quote, Dear Jay, I wonder if you noticed this too, but it's caused by her fear of claustrophobia. Now...
Oh, so she's afraid of the concept of claustrophobia.
No, Jay, I know that you and I stand alone as genius scholars of the ancient Greek language, so I forgive you, proletariat and pedestrian listeners, for not understanding this very obscure and nuanced detail.
But, actually, Andrew, do you mind if I take this one? Do you mind if I take this one, actually? Because it's come to my attention that phobia actually means fear in Greek. So it would seem to me that fear of claustrophobia is rather redundant.
But no, it's not redundant, Jay. Her only fear is fear itself. She's afraid of being afraid of tight spaces.
I think I'm getting afraid of being afraid of tight spaces because the idea of having a panic attack at the thought of being afraid of tight spaces is pretty scary.
It is. So, may I remind you, the first scene, the first moment in this book is Peyton being stuck up a chimney. A thing that has literally killed people before because you can get stuck in that tight space. But no, now she's claustrophobic. Well, no, she's not claustrophobic. She's afraid of being claustrophobic.
You know, it's a first draft. These things can happen.
I'm dying, Jay. I'm dying here.
It's okay. It's okay. That's what we're here for, Andrew. We're going to help Lauren get this worked out, iron out these little wrinkles, and then before this goes to press at, I don't know, Simon and Schuster, just as a random example, some of these glaringly obvious book-ruining internal contradictions will be gone, and it'll be something that is worth selling on the market. It's something that will be worth teens' time.
True, truly. So, one day we'll get it there. So that scene is just it. Kai helps her by loosening her bodice, which is supposed to be him being like sweet but also sexy and flirty. Whatever. But then there's going to be a brawl after the ball.
Yeah.
And yes, they say this several times and call out the fact that it rhymes. So don't worry, nothing is lost on our intrepid author here.
Yeah, we love a little wordplay. Truly a poet.
Truly a poet. Yeah, screw your MFA. Like, Lauren can do it for free.
So, I know.
Okay, so that's it.
So then
there's nothing interesting
Peyton
about
and
the
Blair
brawl.
fight.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually it.
Peyton wins or something. I don't know. She loses, but she wins at the same time, and the novel explains that very confusingly. And then they move on.
Because Blair gets her nose broken, and to deface the face of a woman in this vapid society is tantamount to killing. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, we're moving on. There's a brawl. Don't worry about it. Trial 2 is a team trial. Climbing a freaking mountain, which you will also notice is not in the bowl, which is where the trials were promised to take place in.
You'll also notice that it is actually the exact same thing as the first trial, because even though the first trial wasn't technically a team trial and it was in the woods, it devolved into all of the kids forming teams and running around a wilderness landscape and then fighting each other, which is exactly how this one goes down.
Yeah. So round 30-ish of is Andrew stupid or is something glossed over here? Peyton, Ace, and Jax are on a team together. Ace can... What can Ace do? Something...
Ace is the illusion guy.
He's the illusion guy. So they're all together. I can't define it, but there is something so dreamlike and ethereal about this scene. There's snakes. They fall into a pit of snakes and they throw snakes around, and then they also throw like pine cones around, and it's all so weird. I can't place my finger on exactly why it's weird, but like it doesn't feel like it's actually happening. Does that make any sense to you?
100%. It totally does. I feel like this is a quality that fiction in need of some assistance sometimes runs into, where like things feel like a couple steps too far detached from reality, because there's been other moments that I can't call to mind right now in other books that we've read that have had this effect. And like you might be thinking like, oh, Nova's Playlist, but like Nova's Playlist isn't really it. That's like too extreme of an example of what I'm talking about. It's more just like a scene in like an otherwise like normal-ish seeming book where things just don't feel real because the characters are just like acting like odd, and then like random stuff happens, like the snakes feel so random, and then everyone just kind of moves on from it, which very much feels like a dream.
Yeah. So it happens, they climb up the mountain, they get to the top, and then suddenly there's a sight there who shows them this projection that says, just kidding, no more teams, fight now, which is literally also exactly what happened at the end of the Woods trial. So there's a fight, Ace dies, Peyton wins somehow.
Peyton wins because she and Kai both have an opportunity to run for the flag, but then Kai is like, I'll hold them off, babe. You get it. And then she's like, okay.
Then they're back at the castle. Kit shows up and tells Peyton, hey, remember those secret passageways that you were so subtly bringing up earlier? Let's go look at them. And then they do. They go to Loot Alley, and Kit is like, wow, I didn't know this was how the poors lived. So now Peyton knows that there's a passageway, and she just needs to pickpocket the keys off of old Kit there. So, anyways, Kai has a nightmare, and he goes like, I am grief, I am sorrow. I quoted it in one of our stupid dramatic readings. Peyton hears it from down the hall and goes to comfort him. It's all romantic and intense. He wakes up in consternation and pulls a knife out and like presses it to her neck. And then he's like, oh my God, I was having a nightmare. And then he sees like there's blood drawn and he's like, oh, I'm such a monster. I'm so horrible. Please pity me. And then Peyton does. And then they sleep together. Like literally they sleep on the same bed, not like metaphorically. They just cuddle.
It's like exactly what happens with Oro and Isla. Same beats.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like Oro and Isla, isn't it? Whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. It's time for the third ball now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peyton wears black, and this time Kai is also still angsty because she won't notice him. Again, like Peyton's like focused on pickpocketing Kit so she can get the key to the secret passageway.
Yes, somewhere in here the brothers have started feeling jealous of each other because like they're each jealous of how much time she's spending with the other one. So there's like this suggestion of tension there that like isn't actually there, but the novel like wants you to think it's there.
Tension like a La Croix flavor where there's just like you get the hint of it. So she does this. She does the pickpocketing. It goes fine. And then Kai comes up to her and then he hands her a forget-me-not flower, and he says, like, I got you this because I wanted you to forget me. Not. But then the king interrupts them again, and he's so pissed. He's like, literally, he's been so
like,
mad
Duke
at Kai.
Onklet needs my help fighting off the evil forces of Ganon.
Right? He's been just like,
if I'm not back in a month, send Link.
He's so mad. He's so mad that Kai and Peyton have this like public affair going on. He's like, Kai, literally knock this off and I will get you a government assigned girlfriend. The Peyton is not worth it. And he's just like, screw you, Dad. I love her. What he doesn't say I love her, but he says she's I want to call her mine, blah blah blah. They get in this like little tiff or whatever.
That is pretty much it.
We're almost done, don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, I need to pick it up. Let's see. So after that happens, then the third trial starts, and it's a hedge maze.
It is just a hedge maze. It's a moving hedge maze.
The final trial is a big hedge maze in the arena this time, finally. And you have to get to the middle of it, and at the middle is some nebulous prize. So this is why I said Triwizard Tournament earlier, because this is the final trial of the Triwizard Tournament, because the hedge maze is also moving around and is also full of like random other bullshit traps.
Right. Hey, but
so,
there's
like,
also not just a nebulous prize. There's a prisoner who has committed crimes that must be killed to show your allegiance to Ilya.
Yeah, so, big bullshit twist incoming, because this is a TikTok YA novel after all.
Yeah.
There's some of the characters fight each other on their way to the center of the maze. Let's see, so, like, I think Kai fights Andy. She's the one that turns into animals, right?
But they both shapeshift into, like, jaguars and have a jaguar fight. It's not a human-on-human fight. It's jaguar on jaguar.
Right. And this is also the first time, I believe, we learn that the animal shapeshifting people have like Animorphs rules where if they spend too long in their animal form, they like might lose their minds, which is a crazy late inclusion of this rule. And also like, why is their power the only one that has a massive fucking drawback like that? But anyway, meanwhile, Peyton fights Blair and wins, and then she makes it to the center, and what does she find but her friend Adina tied to a post or something.
Yeah.
And then I don't understand exactly how she gets killed, but she gets skewered by like a branch.
Blair throws that branch with her tele powers.
Blair throws the branch. Okay.
With her brutally blunt branch, as the narration will call it. Yeah, so Adina gets murdered at this moment. There's a lot to say about this death scene.
Yeah, Adina dies, and then I don't know. Peyton has a moment where she's like, "No, don't die," and then she does.
She opens her eyes, and Adina opens her eyes, her bleary, death-worn eyes, and she's like, "It's okay, I have to die. I know that you're the point of view character, and that you need this to happen for your motivations. All I ask for in exchange is that you wear the pretty vest I made you, solidifying me as not a human, but as a deliverer of items and objects for you. Peyton, I want this to happen." And then she dies.
Were this a video game, I would be a shopkeeper. Or maybe she'd be like the inventory management character who stashes unnecessary armor and weapons. Yeah, so then she dies, and at the same moment, the resistance like storms the arena and takes the king hostage, and then chaos breaks out.
Yeah, they're like, "We're gonna kill the prince if you don't let the ordinaries have equal rights." But because Kai has trained against and with every kind of magical power, he knows how to resist the silencers who are like preventing people from using their powers. So he just starts like murdering people indiscriminately, like trying to get control of the situation. Peyton runs off, and she can just run off and escape into the slums or whatever, but she chooses to return to the castle to pick up, one, her father's dagger, and two, the vest, the object that Adina has chosen to sublimate her humanity into as a character. So this allows her to run into King Daddy and have their final confrontation. So somehow King Daddy is already wounded from the skirmishes that they had been having earlier, so he's a little bit off his game, but he is a brawny, so it's his physical abilities versus her. And we get another, like, it's exactly like Crown of Starlight, this absolutely brutal and mean old man on small woman fight scene. And I just don't know, why is that the commonality? Why is that a thing?
I don't know.
Like,
speaking of sublimation, there's something going on there in the collective unconscious.
Electra kind of way. Like, I don't know.
No, I'm not saying that. Just like there's something about that particular dynamic of violence that like then gets, I don't know, libidinally satisfied by the man getting the shit beaten out of him. Which, in the context of the story, he absolutely does deserve, but also, like, it's the choice of the author to create this arrangement of a power dynamic so that it can be inverted. So there's something going on, is all I want to say.
So King Daddy gets the upper hand, and, like, Nathaniel Hawthorne style carves a brand onto her chest, like an O for ordinary, to forever brand her. He's like, "I knew you were an ordinary the whole time. I knew your father. I enjoyed killing him. Wahahaha." And then Peyton gets the upper hand, and she's like, "It's time to die, King Daddy." And then King Daddy's like, "But wait, you think that I killed your father?" And Peyton's like, "You killed my father." And then King Daddy is like, "Mwahahaha, no, I am your father's killer father. My son killed your father, actually. It was Kai." I don't know. I lost track of
it was Kai the whole time.
It was Kai the whole time. Whoa! And then when Peyton looks inside her heart, she realizes it was true after all, and she had misremembered the king when it was actually Kai who killed her father. Cool. So she kills King Daddy, but then gets caught by a sight. And so, like, now everyone knows that Peyton has murdered the king.
Yeah, and then she runs away.
And she runs away. She runs away. She sees a forget-me-not, and she's like, "Oh wow, that's just like Kai, isn't it? Wow." So then
She's like, wow, the flower that's only appeared once previously in the narrative. I wonder what that harkens back to. Anyway.
anyways, so then in our dramatic, like, I don't think it's an epilogue. I think it's just the last chapter. It's in the future. The King Daddy has been buried. Kit has been coronated, and now Kai is the real enforcer. And the brothers are just like, we got to get that dastardly Peyton Gray alive. And that's the whole freaking book. Dun dun dun.
Kit is like, Kylo Ren, I mean Kai, you need to go
Kylo
get Peyton for me.
Peyton Skywalker.
Peyton
Oh my
Palpatine.
God. Peyton Palpatine. Oh wow, yeah. So that's the book, guys. Hope that made any sense.
I feel like we actually kind of crushed that.
I
Actually.
think we aced that interaction. Oh,
Did we
God.
ace it?
All right.
Did we ace it, or was it Ace's illusion? Think about
Shut
it.
up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up.
Think
Shut
about
up. Shut up. That's the end of the summary. Bye. Oh, shit. Okay, so this is in chapter 52.
Okay, chapter 52. In German we would say 52, which is like 2 and 50. Isn't that nifty?
Isn't that nifty? Hey, did they mention they're in Austria? Did they mention they're living abroad? Aren't they so worldly? So now you be Kai, and I'll be Peyton and the narrator, and we're gonna make this excruciatingly long and really lean into it. I'm gonna start with Dimples. Dimples, both of them on display, both distracting, both devastating. What? I ask, my voice filled with laughter. He shrugs, a smile still spread across his face.
I just love the sound of my name coming from your lips.
I clear my throat that has suddenly become far too dry. Well, Kai isn't your real name now, is it? He's silent, nothing but a smile and a sudden intensity in his eyes, daring me to say his full name, wanting me to say his name. And apparently I want to say it too, because when I open my mouth, one word falls out. Malachi. His eyes flutter shut, his head falls back, allowing the rain full access to his face. The smile on his lips and the column of his neck make me swallow. His head still tipped towards the sky, speaking to it as he says, "Only you can make..." Oh shit, not yet, sorry. I got too into it.
I was like, damn, okay. Maybe Andrew actually likes this book. Only you can make my name worth saying.
Well, what would you like me to call you? Kai? Malachi? My voice sounds so breathy, and I almost wish I could blame it on a panic attack. His answer is simple, straightforward, as he dips his head down to look at me.
Call me anything you like. I'll never pass up the chance to hear your voice, darling.
I can feel a smile lifting my lips. Alrighty then. Cocky bastard, it is. I wasn't prepared for the rush of laughter that escapes him. It's a rich, beautiful sound I wish I had the time to commit to memory. Careful, Kai. His smirk grows at the sound of his name once more. You're being a gentleman again. My gaze flicks... Oh, wait. Actually, I do want to say this. My gaze flicks to the black coat he is still holding above my head to shield me from the rain. But you do know I'm already soaked, right? That's it.
God. Why is it just like 500 pages of that?
It's just, there's no plot. Nothing happens. we have an idea of what goes on in the plot. We have an idea of where certain things might be panning out for the better or worse. How about we zoom ourselves out in true sight fashion and project the things that the novel has done well that we think are strengths of this book?
I will start with something small that I thought was a nice touch. So, as we said at the end of our summary, the king is a brawny. And I think that that suits him quite well, better than most of the other characters' powers suit them on like a thematic level, because this book pays a lot of lip service to the idea of the king being like clever for thinking up such dastardly trials. But like frankly, all of the trials are the same and they're the most obvious thing. Just trap people in a hostile environment and have them kill each other. Like there's literally nothing creative about that. And I feel like him being a brawny, maybe against Lauren's own wishes, like reveals his true nature, which is just as like a brutish kind of oaf. Like he's just a mean-spirited, not very smart, a brute.
Yeah.
And I think him being a brawny, like, just is perfectly in line with that.
Okay. I have a positive thing that almost contradicts what you say, like 25% contradicts. So this was completely omitted from our summary, but the king does seem to genuinely love his wife. Unironically, unambiguously,
Oh, true.
he just loves that lady. That is something. It's not super deep, it's not super clever, but it is something that he has this singular affection for his wife, and that is not complicated by any like dark twist or anything. I
True.
like that he has these softer moments here and there. It makes him feel like a guy who could exist rather than a brutish mustache twirling villain, a brutish villain who thinks he's twirling his mustache when he's actually like punching people. I don't know. There's another part to this, and we should have mentioned this in the mountain climbing scene, but Kai has a fear of heights, and King Daddy's way of addressing this is to make him climb mountains and make him climb trees until he's not afraid of heights anymore. Call me a the opposite of a soy boy liberal, but that's actually really effective exposure therapy. And I feel like that comes or could come from a good place. Like, I think King Daddy, at least in this one situation, was actually legitimately trying to help his son by making him climb these mountains and making him, like, conquer his fear. So,
It kind of sounds like you're like a terror-pilled poppy cell right now. It kind of sounds like you want
no!
Kai to hang from a tree by just his hands for 12
No.
hours until his shoulders break. But then when they heal, they'll be like 12 times as strong.
Well, that's
and then he'll have the
stupid.
best shoulders in
Right.
all the realms.
Right, but that is stupid. When it comes to psychological fears, it's like I knew someone who had a fear of bugs. So like the way you overcome that is just looking at bugs, right? So by process, it makes sense that to conquer a fear of heights, you learn how to control your relationship to heights by climbing stuff. So I don't know, like maybe I'm as cruel as this horrible brutish man, but I feel like of all of his crimes, making his son climb up trees as a form of therapy is not the worst thing that he's done. And it means something about his character.
Sure, yeah. I think in light of him also being kind of a wife guy, it does suggest that he does to some degree care about his family's feelings and mental well-being.
And that's something.
If only theirs.
If only theirs. It's not nothing. I will defend the constantly shirtless thing. This is pretty minuscule. It's not even that much of a bad thing in the first place, but especially in the beginning, Kai and Kit and Jax are constantly shirtless. For my birthday this year, we had this wrestling tournament with some of my guy friends where we would just go into the backyard shirtless and just like wail on each other. And I was like, that's what life is all about. That's what you are on this planet for. So I get that there's probably something like really fun in Kai and Kit's mentality about running around and roughhousing shirtless. I feel like that's pretty realistic from a boy standard.
I can't comment on this.
I guess you can't.
I really can't, unfortunately, but I trust you. If it reflects like your true lived experience, then I'm not going to make fun of it, because that would just be mean. So yeah, I'll just grant it.
It's weird because I don't like being shirtless, and it's not something I run around doing, not even thinking about it. But when it comes to, like, I don't know, the masculine urge to fight people, it made sense to me. People have called this out as being really ridiculous, but I want to go on my soapbox.
No, where are people going to hear those unpopular takes about the ways in which these books are good if not on this podcast? There is literally no other venue. I feel like every other place that reviews books like these is like rage bait, trying to like just make it sound like absolute trash, or it's like unapologetic praise that's probably being paid for under the table by Simon and Schuster.
This is also in response to like other people's responses to this book. So the whole opening scene with Kai, where he doesn't kill the ordinary girl, but he does banish her into the desert with her family. I do feel like that's something. And again, I'm saying this in a positive light because I'm comparing it to Grimshaw freaking Malvere. But like, he is more genuinely morally ambiguous than a lot of the other characters that we deal with on this podcast. And that deserves some level of credit for being able to pull off. And again, this is just out of Save the Cat. It's not complicated, but like he didn't kill her, and you know, he finds ways. He's brainwashed more or less by the society that he lives in, but he still finds a way to be moral and have this humanity that presumably is going to grow across this book and in Reckless.
Yeah, I think that was probably the last time in the book that I was actually interested in like the moral ambiguity. But the fact that I was interested at all is definitely a point in the book's favor, because Lightlark never awakened that kind of interest in me ever, because it just insists that it's like ambiguous, but it never is.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a thing where like the instance of him like banishing the girl into the desert instead of just like killing her with his bare hands is like he's trying to resist his dad in the only way that he knows how. So it's like, relative to where he's coming from, it is sort of morally gray. It's still like just evil, but
no,
like,
he's still the bad guy. But again, like Prince Zuko killed people, you know.
Yeah,
I don't.
If you can buy into this world to the point where you can imagine where he's coming from, then he starts to seem a little bit more complicated.
Okay. So, yeah, and again, if this isn't your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. I'm not saying it as some kind of objective value metric, but what I will say is you cannot hate this book and be a Zutara shipper. That's where I draw the line.
Oh boy, are the Zutara shippers gonna come after us in the comments for that?
I hope. Zutara shippers, come at me. I don't care anymore. I'm taking my stance. Sometimes Peyton and Kai's flirting was pretty fun. Again, I think you have to have a certain level of suspension of disbelief and forgetting of how things were established to really enjoy it. But yeah, I could buy that.
I can springboard off of that.
Okay.
Because there's a moment, I think it's in the garden after the second ball, maybe, or during the second ball, where they have like a longer conversation, and I think it's one of the book's longest chapters, and their flirting moves out of the realm of quote-unquote banter. So basically they stop calling each other darling and cocky bastard, and they start just talking to each other about things that they're interested in, and it's a very boring conversation. But it's the first time that they've interacted like two people getting to know each other in the real world would do. And so in the context of that, it's actually extremely refreshing. Kind of in the same way that Isla's conversation with Azul is like weirdly sobering in the middle of Nightbane. It had that same effect on me. Where I was like, oh, there's humans interacting. That way,
but I see what you mean. Yeah, there's people here.
Yeah, there's a trace of like actual characters. Like these seem, it seems like I'm sure that Lauren was taking notes on like character details before she started writing this first draft that this is. And
Yeah.
this felt like a scene where like she referred back to the character charts and was like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, his favorite color is green."
Right.
But I was like,
So
at least there's that.
there is that. There is that. I know we've already talked about this a little bit, but I did like Isla. Wow. I really did like Peyton's little psych moments where she could like cold read someone. Again, I think to like those scenes presupposes that this is like a vapid society, but it was something. It was more than Isla Crown ever gave us, so I have to give credit where credit's due here.
I like this presupposing that this is a vapid society angle. I hope we can go in on that more in the next bit because I think that would, think that might sell me on this book.
There's a couple missing pieces that I was kind of assuming into place that will go into my suggestions that I think will make things work out here. The trials made perfect sense.
Yeah. Oh, we could expand on that we mentioned during the summary, like as if the pitch is deadly game or game with death optional, this is a game with death in it.
Yes.
It's a series of actual trials.
Yes. They
And
make sense.
the stakes of the trials are stated at the outset. We don't get until the end of the book before we find out what the prophecy that outlines the rules actually says.
Yes.
That's good.
That's good. That's my thing is I kept seeing people saying that this is like worse than Lightlark, probably for like the SEO of like getting their videos like searchable. But like this book is better than Lightlark. This book made me more mad because it failed in worse ways than Lightlark. But it's literally like Lauren was listening to our Lightlark episodes, took all of our advice, and then fucked up every other thing.
She's like, what if I followed their instructions, but only their instructions?
Only their instructions. Like every problem I have with Lightlark is addressed here perfectly, but she just made new problems for me to have.
It's like whack-a-mole.
It is like whack-a-mole. It is like whack-a-mole. And I just like...
Actually, that's a really interesting distinction because this book did make me more mad than Lightlark, but I think you're right. I think it's only because it fails in ways that like it would have been interesting if it had succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Lightlark is just mid, kind of just all around.
Right. And I'm just like, we could have done anything. Here, that's my positive thing. This book could have done anything. This book could have been anything and it would have been good. But the problem is that it was nothing, but that is for another sequence. I liked the idea of Adina and Peyton living together in the slums. That was cottagecore,
that is cute.
Dirt fun. I could have seen a book about that. Maybe that's what Powerful is about. I don't know.
Maybe. What is Adina's power? Do we know?
Oh, I can't remember. It's something completely stupid, which goes back into her being a mundane. No, I have no idea. Sorry if that's important.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it's important either. For all
must
intents
not
and
be.
purposes, she might as well be ordinary. I'm so hung up on the mundane thing because I feel like that was probably like a last minute inclusion to further taxonomize the powers. Because for all intents and purposes, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Adina might as well be an ordinary too. She doesn't use her powers to be better at sewing as far as I know. She's just good at it. Question mark?
So that's another reason that I was thinking that the psychic cold reading ability would definitely be a thing that other people use to fake having powers, because there's lots of other powers that are unfalsifiable, like being a hyper is like one where you're like your senses are heightened, which is kind of just like having a symptom of autism a little bit. Like some people are unusually noise sensitive or like light sensitive, and you could just like, if your parents had you and you're ordinary and they wanted you to survive, they could just train you to be like very reactive to loud noises or something like that, right?
Like we did with the psychic powers with Peyton.
And how would you prove that they don't have that? Or like if a kid was actually autistic and they just like were very noise sensitive, wouldn't they seem like a hyper? I don't know. Like there could be lots of ordinaries hiding is my point.
Well, that's acknowledged in text. I can't remember which ones. I think it might have been Hyper. They say there are a few powers that are easily falsified, right? So there are ordinaries living amongst people. I guess psychics are one of them that you can just like pretend to have. Maybe it was like Brawnies and or Brawnies and or the Hypers. But the resistance people do talk about like, hey, we have XYZ people with power or faking having powers to live amongst people in Ilia.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like there would be more of them, but also like
Yeah.
like more psychics would be around was my main thing, but that's not even a good thing. I just don't have anything else, I don't think.
Okay.
Um, it's
Well, all right, Lauren. uh good job. Good job. We'll move on from here and talk about some things that you could do better.
keep eating your vegetables.
Okay. All right. I'm screaming. I'm lifting her into my arms. I'm brushing her bloody hair back. I'm saying something, but I don't know what. My mind is numb. My heart is numb. Everything is numb. She's smiling in death as though happy to be rid of life, happy to be rid of me. I am grief. I am sorrow. I am anguish alike. I think I might also be dead, just decaying on the inside. That was lineated like a poem. I thought you would appreciate that.
Okay, Andrew. Darling. Andrew, you cocky bastard.
I'm cocky
you.
bastard and darling?
Sin-
What are you gonna be?
yeah, you're
King
Andrew,
Daddy?
you're everything to me. You're my I could not forget you. You're my forget me not as
you.
well. Yeah, I'll be King Daddy. Why not? Since you know so much about fiction, you sly dog, why don't you tell me some issues you had with this book?
So you weren't doing a bit earlier, right? You also picked up on how Freudian this book is.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't really like pick up on it at the time, but as you were describing it back to me, I was like, wait a second.
So
this is weird.
we mentioned in the summary, Peyton doesn't want to help Kai at first, but then seeing him helpless reminds her of her father, and that's what prompts her to intercede. Also, Kai goes on and on about how beautiful his mother is, and that other characters comment on how he has a smile that is only for his mother and Peyton. There's something underlying the relationships that I think is completely unaddressed and probably attributable to the author's lack of experience hiding these certain things about herself.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you said it first because I had the same sense where it's like this feels like the kind of fiction where like just a lack of experience means that the author isn't used to like intentionally selecting her language, and so things that she doesn't intend to reveal about herself are being revealed.
It's kind of Nova's Playlist in that way.
Yes, very much so. And I feel like that's more broadly indicative of like an author who hasn't received a lot of feedback from other writers or from experienced readers.
Right. Maybe an author who just posted random quotes on TikTok to see what gets the most interaction and didn't think of it beyond that.
Yeah, maybe someone who wasn't considering like the whole work and the fact that it should like have a goal or like desire to communicate something about the human experience to people. Instead was just sort of trying to, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't speak to her intentions because I don't really know what she was after, but it has been adopted as kind of like a Lightlark successor light. So it's like, was she chasing that? I don't know.
I cannot place what this is supposed to mean, like you're saying. So I can only, like I said, in Nova's Playlist fashion, assume that this is something that Lauren is just taking for granted about the way human interaction works. I really hope before draft 2 or draft 3, before you even consider big 4 publication for this book, Lauren, you should probably get some people to read this and make sure that there's not something deeply weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you might want to make sure that you taking that attraction for granted and just assuming that everyone will be unquestioningly on board for it doesn't reveal something about your own psyche that, like, maybe you don't want the entire world and especially all of TikTok to know about you.
So yeah, probably address that, Lauren.
Just something to think about. Again, we're just a regular old club at a regular old university, so the stakes are really quite low for now. But someday, when this is published at a big 4 publisher, and lots of people have access to it, and you do become an international best-selling author whose book is so popular, in fact, it's actually hard to find in English in foreign countries, and people have to go to multiple bookstores trying not to find the German translation that's almost twice as long, that you make sure the book says what you want it to say.
Right.
Just as a random example that hasn't yet occurred, but may at some point.
You haven't crossed the point of no return yet, Lauren.
Maybe this is taste, and I feel like you're going to say it is, Andrew, based on previous comments you've made, but I do feel like I wouldn't be sharing my full thoughts if I didn't say that, like, the banter in this book is not my thing. It does just feel like they're mean to each other all the time, particularly Peyton and Kai, and that's supposed to pass as flirting. But, like, having heard you already push back on that a little bit, I kind of want to amend that critique and say that, like, maybe it's not always so much the banter itself as it is the way that it's paired with other emotions within the same scene. Because I feel like oftentimes characters will be flirting in the same scene where, like, for example, they have killed and buried somebody that Kai knew since he was a child.
Right.
And then, like, there will be actual threats on their life, and then they will be sad, and then they will start bantering again. And it's just like these things clash up against each other, even on the same page. And it's like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right in that context.
Okay, so I do chalk that up to taste, but I'll treat it as if it's not for the sake of argument, because I do have some counterpoints to that. So you called out the flirting when someone has just been killed and buried, and the flirting when other bad things have just happened. But that's not that is, I believe, cherry picking. The flirting is happening nigh constantly. So the fact that it happens, like, when someone is murdered is not exceptional to the normal paradigm between these characters. So I guess, to me, I lost it in the noise. Again, I don't think, like, you're incorrect in that assessment, but it's not like they weren't flirting any other time, or they were never like, oh, let's not flirt right now. Now it's too serious. Like, whether it's a ball or murder in the woods, like, it's the same both ways.
I guess, but, like, I would expect that to a degree, fiction embellishes and comments upon the reality that, like, we kind of collectively experience, as insofar as a collective experience exists. And it has not been my experience that people's emotions are so easily able to just sort of go from mourning the death of a childhood acquaintance to Marvel movie script.
Okay, yes, that just needs to be fixed.
It's a little shocking at times.
Yeah. But I'm kind of chewing on that, because, again, you're completely correct. It's just, I wonder if that's just assumed to be what you're signing on for with one of these things, where we're promised Hunger Games, romance, ACOTAR, or whatever. Not ACOTAR, but Red Queen, probably also ACOTAR, but whatever. Where we're gonna see this gross flirting constantly, and that's just part of the vibe. Like, I don't think it was done wantonly. That's a head scratcher.
Yeah, you're saying it's like an expectation of the genre, right? But maybe, like, the problem that I have is with the genre itself.
Right. And it might just be like the way the dynamic works. I mean, think of Crown of Starlight. Not every reader is going to be on board for shape shifting BDSM, lesbian, and then also bisexual romance. So, like,
Well,
I
maybe they
do.
should be.
Maybe, yeah, maybe they should be. But that
Hey,
notwithstanding.
well, maybe they should be, and maybe they should like the feet kissing guy.
Okay, all right, shut up, whatever.
That's right. That's right. I said it.
Wow. You're really taking a brave and bold position in your literary consumption. But what I mean is, not everything is for everybody. So I think it's not ridiculous that you have this opinion. I think a rational person could find the flirting in Powerless a little bit too much and still be able to be respected as a human at the end of the day. So if that's what you want to
Wow,
hear.
I'm so so glad we found a middle ground on that it may be acceptable to believe that
Maybe.
Powerless's flirting is a little over the top,
Maybe.
perhaps. It's very moderate of us.
Oh my god.
Welcome to the enlightened centrism of book review shows.
Here's something that I put in this section, but it may not be bad. I may not even be correct about this. It's going to depend on the sequel. So, Jay, we know a couple things just from the corpus of Powerless. So, Kai does not kill ordinary children. That opening scene is kind of emblematic of the way that he always is. Kit knows that Kai does this. Like, Kai never kills ordinary children. Kai also feels weird about killing in general, especially when he first started training to be the future enforcer. We know that Kai killed Peyton's father. We know that Peyton's memory is bad. And we know healers are able to bring people back from the brink of death because of the scene with Jax getting injured.
Okay.
So, put all of that together in the big machine of your mind. Peyton's father is definitely alive, right?
I was kind of wondering that as well.
Like,
because like once you've introduced the idea that like her memory of that event is not right and we have never seen his body to my knowledge,
so
it just like the door is wide open for him being around.
so
I was kind of expecting the king to be her dad for a second.
a little bit. Yeah, I was too. But I was kind of thinking about this, and in my copy at least, I don't know about how the inferior mass market paperback UK copy looks, but I was looking at the end, and there is like a scene from 6 years in the past of Kai actually killing Peyton's father. And so we do have what I call habeas corpus, where we do see the pool of blood with Peyton's father lying Family Guy style sprawled out on the floor. But I was like, okay, well, that smoking gun, Kai definitely killed Peyton's father. But we know that people can sustain life-threatening injuries and come back from it because Kai was able to use healing powers on Jax. So there's no reason, hypothetically, that a healer would not be able to heal himself ex post facto.
You're saying we literally have a healer heal thyself scenario on our hands.
I mean, so there's so many points in this equation to where X equals Peyton's father is alive, to where it would be weird for me if X doesn't actually equal Peyton's father is alive. Might not be a bad thing, depends on what happens in the sequel. I may be completely off base, but so much is like going into this that my fourth wing alarm bells are going off. And I was like, it's just like how Braden, whatever his freaking name was, wasn't actually dead. There's a lot of signs pointing to it. I don't know what that says. If it were me, again, I'd like a little bit more of an unflinching anti-hero to where, like, maybe he did actually kill Peyton's father. So I hope it doesn't come out the way that I'm seeing it, but, like, all of the parts are in place for this.
Okay, slamming my money down on the table right now.
Okay.
My bet is there is a even secreter type of magical person that we haven't heard about that can bring people back from the dead.
What are they going to be called? Resurrectors? Revivalist?
Yeah, sure, why not? I was thinking revivalist. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I think there's going to be one of those, and they're gonna have like his body or something, and they'll bring him back.
Okay. My bet is that he healed himself, and or there was some other contrivance to where he was never even really dead in the first place. So commenters, if
It was an illusion. Somebody else in the room was a fucking illusion guy.
Oh my god. That's definitely gonna be what it is, isn't it? That's definitely gonna be what happens.
Kai was probably using illusion powers from somebody in like a neighboring building or some garbage like that. And he was
my
like, oh, look, I totally killed him. He's really dead.
Dude, that's totally what it is. Yes, because Kai would like want the approval of his father and not want to actually kill someone, and oh god, that's definitely
And here's
happen.
further evidence to support that theory. Further evidence is that that's the exact kind of thing that would make you ask, wait, why hasn't Kai always done that for every time he was assigned to kill somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of contradiction that we have, I think, established quite cleanly that Lauren Roberts would not catch, which I think is itself supporting evidence to the theory.
So we'll have to see. Maybe we'll read Reckless one day. Jay, I bet you and I have the same biggest bad thing that makes this book completely unreadable. I feel like you should have it more than I do as the poetry MFA, because you put so much weight on the individual words.
Yeah. I'll let you take this one because I think you actually feel stronger about it than I do.
How do you not feel as strongly as I do? Because it's crazy. Okay, so sorry. Getting ahead of myself, the worst thing in this book, the thing that makes it completely unreadable and nauseating and infuriating and awful, is the ubiquity of the alliterations in this book. Every sentence has at least 2, usually 3, words with the exact same beginning letter in it. There was the brutal, blunt branch drove through Adina's breast. It is crazy. It is definitely intentional. Our dramatic readings, probably every single one, but at least one in particular, have several alliterations in each sentence. How do you do that? Why do you think it's good? Why did an editor let it through? Why did you conceive of doing this in the first place? This is nuts. This is freaking baffling to me.
This is absolutely why I think that Lauren is not somebody who's accustomed to having her work critiqued by peers or, I don't know, professors or whatever. Because, like, that's... alliteration is... unfortunately, like, kind of one of the first plot devices you learn to use
for no reason.
That means that, like, it tends to lend itself to like a little bit of overzealous use, I think, at first. And it's like, it's something that other people catch very easily because it calls so much attention to itself. And when it's being used in situations where it is totally unnecessary and is even detrimental to the story, it is easy to catch. And I think that if other people had been reading this, they would have said something.
Why do you think alliteration is like baby's first rhetorical device? Like, is it just because it's so easy to identify?
Because I think it's something that even a child can do. Maybe even without meaning to. Like, it's kind of an initial result of just like linguistic or sonic play. You know? Like, it's fun to establish a pattern, and before you can read or write, the patterns you notice in language are the ones that you can hear. And you can hear alliteration.
But it's not even like double entendre or lineation, where by necessity you are saying something by having things phrased and formatted a certain way. It is just, wow, isn't that weird that you can say a sentence with the same beginning vowel sound every single time?
Yep.
We had this... I wish I remembered. So, lore moment in the real life English club that Jay and me came from, we had someone who would write like these really high fantasy stories, and there would always be some alliteration. Literally, one of his first submissions was, what did it say? The stream deposited its liquid load, and we all called that out. Every single person in the room made a Google comment about like, hey, don't have this in here. And he didn't realize that it had this connotation because he was hung up on having the alliteration in the first place. I wish I remembered
Yeah.
why he said he was doing it. Something about like in Old English poetry. It
Yep,
was
that was exactly it.
okay.
It was old or Middle English poetry. Alliteration was considered to be like one of the most beautiful rhetorical devices or something like that. That was his reasoning. I
It's
don't know if
like,
that's true. I'm not claiming that that's true, but that was
right.
what he said.
Which, like, when I think of alliteration, I think of baby books or like the opening bits of Letterkenny. Like, it's just like a funny little
Yeah.
thing that you do, not something that you
Yeah.
put in every other sentence in your 500-page novel. It drove me bonkers. I know, like, I'm harping on this, but like, I implore you, read a sample of this and see for yourself how just brick to the skull it is.
I think you make a really good point, and like it didn't personally bother me, only because I think my like intellectual and emotional energy was being directed elsewhere. But it does indicate a problem in the book where attentiveness to language is being misused. It's not just that like the book is inattentive to its own language and themes, but like that when it is attentive, it's doing so for literally no reason, which is so irritating because it's like the fact that you're using alliteration as like a go-to device, not just as a rhetorical device, but as inevitably a sonic device,
Right.
it draws attention to the sound of language itself. And this book, thematically, has no interest in sound or language as
None.
themes. So why would you direct the reader's attention there continually? It doesn't make any sense to do that. And like, yeah, that's exactly why it's frustrating, right? Because it's like leading you on a dead end trail. It's like a
Right.
wild goose chase.
I am desperate to hear what Lauren Roberts thinks she was doing, if that has ever come up in like an interview or anything. I think after this call I'm going to be looking into it because like I just like I want to know like what makes you think that that's okay to do basically.
Yeah. Wonder if she even I wonder if she even recognized the cumulative effect that has. You know?
She couldn't have. She couldn't have because she would realize that it sucks.
She would have to realize that it's annoying, especially when it's the same alliterative phrase. Because she'll call somebody like a clever something, cocky something, and it's like that same phrase gets reused over and over again, and it'll be like a 3-word alliterative description of somebody, and it's like, you know you're doing that, like why?
So springboarding from the alliteration, but on that same vein, this is something that I was really charitable to in Zenith, which is another kind of juvenile book that is easy to draw comparisons with Powerless. I was very nice about the redundancies in Zenith because there would be a thing where like Andy, the captain, was like, oh, had I just done this or that thing better, then we wouldn't have gotten into this mess. And then the co-pilot, Lyra, would be like, had I just been a better co-pilot, I wouldn't have gotten into this mess. I was like, okay, this is redundant, but it's showing us these two characters and their different takes on the situation. I am not willing to give that level of charitability to Powerless because it works in this very jarring rhetorical level where on top of the alliteration, so let's forget that there's even alliterations in this book.
Okay.
I would be reading this and I would completely like the needle would slip off the track of the record of my mind and I would just hear dimples, blah 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 blah, ocean eyes, something something something, twisted trials. There was like dimples, ocean eyes, twisted trials, cocky bastard. There's
Scheming, clever.
little things would be said over and over and over and over, and it's everyone again, it feels like you are being struck with a brick. It is that jarring because there's not one other way you can describe these certain things, and it's just like I think that pads out the length. I think part of the 500-page word count here is due to the fact that we hear the same things over and over and over.
And also, as it's repeating itself, it's doing that Lightlark thing where it will put a new sentence on a different line so you know that it's dramatic.
I trust that Lauren knows more than 5 words. I mean, in English too, in middle school, when you're 13, she's probably reading Of Mice and Men, maybe even To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, things are really looking up for her in terms of like new words that she can use. Hey, next year might even be Great Gatsby. So like she can learn some symbolism from that. And like
And that's assuming she hasn't already come across A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Which is perhaps where she drew some of her dreamlike inspiration.
Advanced level stuff we're dealing with. So yeah, I
just wait till you get to Kafka, Laura, and you're gonna love that. You're gonna eat that shit up. The weird Freudian stuff that goes on in there. The weird nonsensical worlds.
Oh, you'd love it.
Oh, you're just gonna love it.
Why did you do this? And
I don't know. I don't have anything to say other than it's because nobody else looked at this.
Right.
Until like the first time that other eyes were on this, other than I think the 2 or 3 people she mentions in the acknowledgments who were probably just friends or whatever. Like the first time eyes were on this was when editors at Simon & Schuster were passing it off to be published, and like it had already guaranteed it was going to make $1 billion squillion, a golly gee $1 trillion.
Right.
So like they didn't care. There was no time to try to actually make it a better story, because once you start fixing little things, you might as well fix all of it. So if they weren't going to do that, so what does that leave?
This is apocryphal, but shout out to some German girl on BookTube that I was watching earlier to prepare myself for this episode. She was saying something about how like Lauren was writing this in college, but then decided to drop out of college, and she wanted to focus on writing this book alone. And I guess she just slapped this on Amazon. It got traction because of her BookTok stuff. Simon & Schuster picked it up and then did line edits, but that's it. That's all they did. God, what's Amulet an imprint of? It's Penguin. And now Simon & Schuster has their own Lightlark. So we're just seeing this trend of just like, hey, this crappy thing got crapped out, but it's doing good on BookTok, so we'll make it happen. Don't worry about all the stupid alliterations and the fixation on dimples. Okay, this is bad. I might just leave this for the channel members. I have to decide whether or not I want to see it. But
we have to. Only the channel members get to see how mad we really get. They get to know our dark sides.
This reminds me of every now and then when you go on the website deviantart.com and you see someone who has like 1,000 submissions about belly buttons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like with dimples, like Lauren Roberts has like a DeviantArt full of Sonic the Hedgehog MS Paint art with like Sonic having dimples, because that is the extent to which she shows her interest in that part of the body that like I never thought about like considering attractive before.
Sonic would be a good art style for that too, because like they kind of have like a facial color separation, like under the eyes, like the nose mouth area is like a different color usually. So like I feel like the dimples would stand out really well.
Yeah, but the fixation is so weird to me, and that's what it feels like. Talk about like what does alliteration do? What refrain does is emphasize fixation. We are showing that Lauren Roberts is obsessed with dimples, obsessed with ocean eyes, obsessed with twisted trials,
and being shirtless.
And being shirtless. But it's all for naught. It is all for nothing.
I know, and that's the sad thing, is it's like, this is gonna sound weird, but like, I mean this totally earnestly. I would like to know why those things interest her. Like, I would like to know why Lauren Roberts as a person is so attracted to dimples. Like, what does she find attractive about them? Because if she were to work that into, obviously, a novel about more than just that, I feel like I would be more attentive to when I see dimples on people's faces, and that would
Sure.
make me like a more alive person in the world that's more observant to the things around me and is more just like interested and curious in other people's experiences. But instead, she
Right.
just keeps, as you said, beating us over the head with the brick of the fact that she likes that. And it's like, okay, geez, dude, I fucking get it. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah. Like, what are we supposed to do with it? What are we supposed to do with it?
Yeah, and
I
what am I
don't know.
supposed to do with the fact that your boyfriend reminds you of your dad dying?
Right, right. God, that go to therapy. So let's talk about intentionality here, and let's abstract this away from the prose entirely and go back to
Please, let's talk about intentionality.
the pitch of this. I didn't come up with the site comparison, but what she called this was if Red Queen had a baby with the Hunger Games and then the child didn't look anything like either of the two parents. That is what she posted on BookTok, which, one, is not true. It looks like both of the parents very, very clearly.
And also, what what are the point of the parents in that metaphor if it doesn't look like either of them? Why do you bring them up?
So this I will defend. Okay, so let's. This isn't what my point was going to be about, but you made this point, and I've heard other people make this point. Why do you say it's X meets Y? The answer is because you have to. I will give Lauren Roberts that clemency that if you're trying to pitch something to the big leagues, you have to be like, it looks like this thing that makes money and also this other thing that makes money. So you can take the people that like this and that thing that's familiar to you and use that to pitch it. I don't like it, but that is the material reality of business, not even selling books. Like, people like things that look like other things that they like. That is psychology.
Fair enough.
I don't mind hearing that this is Hunger Games meets Red Queen meets Psych, or meets Sherlock. I think Psych, but maybe Sherlock. I don't mind hearing that. The problem is what we get is Hunger Games, then Red Queen, then Psych. There is never a scene that invokes both of those things. There is the Hunger Games segment, there is the Red Queen segment, and there are little Psych scenes embedded in between them, but they never intersect, they're never modifying each other, and they never do anything with one part or the other. It is always just the stupidest parts of each of them in non-intersecting boxes in a random order, then the book's over.
I believe the word that you like to use is untransformative.
Untransformative, yes. I use that because you talk about poems being transformative, and I want to sound more erudite when I talk about text. So I
I
blame
think it
you for
worked
that.
because I think talking about how something is untransformative is actually more interesting than talking about how this or that is transformative.
There's just no intersection, and that's what got me is like I read Red Queen like I was probably like 18 or 19. Like I read Red Queen a long time ago. I remember there were two boys, they were brothers, and one was the dark brooding one and one was the golden boy, but then it turned out the golden boy was the douchebag this whole time. And like I remember there were reds and silvers and there were powers. And they have that in Powerless,
Yeah, they
but
sure
they're
do.
just in those scenes, and then we are literally carried by chariot away from Red Queen into Hunger Games, and Red Queen never comes back, Psych never comes back. There's never a point where Peyton is in the woods doing Hunger Games survival, and then she psychologically deduces that Ace has been weakened from another fight,
Right.
and she realizes that his left leg is twisted. There's not one time it happens. It just becomes the Hunger Games. It
It is, yeah, it's just pieces of those books like picked out and then like sewn together, but like sequentially. They're not even like sewn into each other.
And again, if it were genuinely that meets that and they combined the two, I would be okay with that. I would defend this book here on the podcast. I'm not getting mad just for content. I'm getting mad because the thing that we were sold is not the product that went into my eyeballs. So here's another thing, and I'm hung up on this because I think this is the coolest part. And again, this is probably more about like my trauma from reading Lightlark than like actual quality. But I love the psych element. I love, love, love the fact that she's living hand to mouth and she's relying on the teachings of her father to survive in this world. It reminds me of Psych. It reminds me of Dexter. It reminds me of these really cool premises where there's a fish out of water who's pretending to be a fish that doesn't need to be in the water, pretending to be a lungfish. Whatever, I don't care. So
a fish out of water that's pretending to be a fish.
Right.
Just for the hell of it.
For the hell of it. I loved this scene. I loved the scenes where she would be like, oh, you cheated on your wife. Oh, your grandfather died 2 weeks ago. I loved that. That was so cool to me. You know, not everything was working perfectly, but it was such an interesting thing. But then what would happen is, even when we weren't getting that, we would get like Kit and Kai, and I forgive me for not being able to come up with a super specific example of this, but Kit and Kai would be like, ooh, I've noticed something very, very specific in your behavior lately, Peyton, that makes me realize that you're not feeling very well. But they shouldn't be doing that because Peyton is supposed to be the intuitive one. So we're not even
That's
getting...
like her one thing.
Yeah, that we're not even getting her one thing being special to her. And just, why is this happening?
Speaking of Freudian, it's like, isn't it kind of weird that this novel, like, almost kind of fetishizes, like, the idea of being intuitive and observant, but like then itself doesn't know how to actually make a character be those things.
I don't
like it just keeps insisting that she is
right,
but then like she doesn't actually ever use them in ways that would like move the plot forward or really advantage her in some kind of way. It's only when she's like specifically called upon to do so.
And again, round 40 of Is Andrew Stupid? Did she use her cold reading ability at any point after the interviews, right before the first trial? Can you think of any point where she did something cold ready?
I can't. And I might be forgetting one, but I can't.
No, because I think you're right, because at that point, Hunger Games takes over, and then we have to juggle between Hunger Games and Red Queen, and we never get a point where it's both. It has to be one or the other.
Andrew, I would welcome a version of the conversation we're about to have where you just tell me like, no, you're wrong, you weren't paying attention.
I will give you that, I promise.
Okay. I felt like all of the point of view characters, which is to say mainly Kai and Peyton and then Kit briefly at the very end, they all sound the same. Like their voices are the same.
I agree. They sound exactly the same.
I wish I could tell you exactly what they sound like so that I could back that up in some kind of, I don't know, substantial way, but like they just sound the same. Like they feel like the same person talking. And I think it's partly because of what we were just talking about, where like the characters have these distinguishing features, at least at the beginning, ostensibly. But then like by the end they're all just like fighting each other anyway. So they're all thinking about the same things. They're talking about the same things. So Hayden isn't doing her psychic shit anymore.
I know that is a nebulous thing to say, but let's take the case in point. I mentioned this earlier. Peyton is never diegetically taught to call Blair bitchy Blair. Nevertheless, she does. This is a cognomen given to her by Kai. The two characters know things that the others do. And I think even beyond voice, that level of like dramatic irony, I think sells the fact that this is the same person. This is another taste thing. I'm personally a sucker for the textured close third that's like informed by the character's like personality. But this is first person. And I'll say like the average Joe Schmo writer does have a problem with first person just sounding like them. And a lot of times it's not a problem. Like, just because it sounds like you doesn't mean it's not good narratively. But if you have two characters that are supposed to come from completely different walks of life, then you have a problem. And I think that's what we're seeing here is like, I don't think there's anything in Kai's perspective that denotes him coming from opulence, and there's nothing in Peyton's perspective that denotes her living in the slums and or coming from opulence and then losing that. So
Actually, quite to the contrary, there's a moment in one of Peyton's chapters where she, in her own internal dialogue, refers to homelessness with disdain, as though she is not literally homeless, which is like, huh, that's interesting. Speaking again of Freudian stuff, Lauren, that's kind of weird. But also, like, this is a character who shouldn't be like, oh, the homeless. Like, girl, that's you!
One, right? So it's like,
that's you, and you know that's you because your house is a pillow fort, except the pillows are garbage.
It calls to mind, I remember we went and we defended the authors of Zenith because they used these like metaphors that you said, and I use this a lot actually, ironically say more about the comparator than the thing being compared. So like saying that something is like a Darawak, saying that a spaceship is as fast as a Darawak, ironically means more about the Darawak than it does for the ship. So there should have been something like that in the narration of both of our characters to where, let's say, okay, so Kai's looking out at this crowd and he's like, seeing all the different colors reminded me of the beautiful gardens of my palace that I grew up in, whereas Pei would look out and
isn't that literally, hold on, isn't that same comment literally Nova's playlist? Doesn't somebody compare something to the palace gardens in, oh, what is the Scythia?
Scythia, yeah. Cythera. So,
Cythera.
Yeah.
Doesn't somebody say...
Someone does that at some point. I believe that. No, yeah, I don't remember, but I believe you. So like, and then Pei would be like, wow, the crowd is so colorful, just like the trash pile that I sleep on every day. You know, like something like that, to where like down to the thing, the cultural references that they have to draw on. I mean, part of this is tone, and like with the whole like Marvel quips or whatever, at a certain point it just comes into the voice of the work as a whole, not necessarily any one particular character, but it is the cultural references that they have to draw upon. And that relationship there. So I don't know. It's bad. They sound like the same character.
It's a problem because I feel like part of that, as you're alluding to cultural references, like they don't really have a culture. Like I would defy you, Andrew, and or reader of this book / listener of this podcast, to tell me anything about like the cultural or especially like visual aesthetic identity of this world. Like They describe the place that Kai and King Daddy and Kit and Queen live as a castle, but like what kind of castle? Because there can be lots of kinds of castles. And then there's like slums, but like what kind of slums? Like what do they look like on a very basic level? The Whispers are a forest, but like forests can look super different from each other. Like where are we? What does this place look like? What does it feel like? How does any of that contribute to the culture of this world?
Yeah. No, I have no answers for you. It's well, see, that's why I had to do so much headcanoning that I'll get to more closer to my suggestions, but like I have no idea what the society is like, let alone the geography. So we're just kind of grasping at straws here, and
yeah,
I think that's annoying because again, we could have done anything, because I was thinking about your point about like Peyton's disdain for the homeless. That could be an intentional choice done by Lauren to highlight the fact that she grew up in this prissy hoity-toity world. So maybe there is, by intention, this contradiction in her personality where she's like, oh, well, I'm just a temporarily embarrassed rich person. I'm not one of those
Yeah, yeah,
filthy
absolutely.
homeless people. Like, maybe she feels more comfortable in this palace, and that makes her feel guilty because she loves Adina very genuinely. So, like, we could have done anything. We could have done anything with this and kept it the same even and just drawn more attention to it, adding more intentionality, and it would have been better. But alas.
It makes me wonder what the goals of this were. Like, because it just feels like it doesn't have any, other than like, what if there was a romance story where the characters had banter? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what did Lauren want to communicate to us with this?
She wanted to communicate, hey, Hunger Games is a thing you like. Hey, Red Queen is another thing you like. What if we gave you that again?
But with nothing added, and like some of the cool parts of some of those, like living uncomfortably next to each other. Okay, speaking of unclear visual and cultural identity to this world, I kind of want to talk about how the travel scenes are really all completely terrible.
Okay.
And it's because, in part, okay, so to recap, since the summary's probably been a little while at this point, there's like basically two really big travel scenes. One is when they're walking around in the woods during the first trial, and then the other is when they're hiking during the second trial. And then there's some other scenes where like Peyton is traveling around in loot or whatever. But the book seems like weirdly invested in having these like longer sequences where characters are just moving through or across or to a location. And yet, these are some of the worst scenes in the book. And it's because A, we have no sense of what this world looks like at all, so the outer world isn't doing anything. And then B, these characters' interior worlds are totally desolate. Like, they're
Yeah.
not thinking about shit. So there's nothing for anybody to do.
Yeah, their heads are empty.
Right, there's nothing happening. And I think that's why, like, randomly they have to get attacked by snakes or whatever. Because, like, that's the only way that Lauren can make sure that events occur within the parameters of the world that she has set up already.
I think the lack of interior world is the biggest problem there. I do not like that all of our side characters are reducible to one description, usually alliterative. There's Braxton the Brawny, there's bitchy Blair, jumping jacks, like
Jumping jacks.
I just like can there be nothing else? Can there be not like literally in that climbing scene, Blair is just throwing pine cones at people to be mean. Like that's it. Like at least in the Hunger Games, like these were like traumatized children, so there was like something else going on there that we could pick apart. But like she's just mean, and I feel like there's so much lost. These are just skeleton scenes that we don't have any meat on because these characters don't have personality.
And I wonder if it is because Lauren Roberts was excited by, like, ooh, what if I did, like, Hunger Games but fantasy? And so, like, she's not doing her own thing. She's just trying to replicate the Hunger Games. But, like, you can't because you're not Suzanne Collins. No one is Suzanne Collins. And so, like, that's why it feels so weird and off, is because it's not Lauren Roberts' story. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, but yeah, you could have done Lauren Roberts' story and it would have been good. There's a lot in here that I think would have been good.
I feel like that is in conversation with Nova's playlist. There was something you said during that episode where it's like, I want to see what you can do. I forget exactly how you phrased it or what the context was.
That's what I said.
But you were like, yeah, you were saying that she was like an outsider artist, Lauren M. Davis was, and that like if she pushed more into the things that like were really weird and interesting to her, it would be a more interesting and original book.
And that's exactly what we're lacking here. Yeah. Oh, God.
But I think the difference between those is that this is chasing a trend, or seems to be chasing a trend, and Nova's playlist was maybe like 10 books smashed together.
Yeah, I think Lauren was just like, Lauren M. Davis. I forgot that they both have the first name Lauren. Lauren M. Davis was just like, oh wait, I forgot I was writing a book and had to add like new things to happen just to keep the plot going. With Lauren Roberts, it is a lot different in terms of like, oh, I'm writing The Hunger Games. Nothing added to that. So
Yikes. That's a yikes from me, dog.
shut up. Let's keep playing Is Andrew Stupid? Because I think that's a fun game. A lot of this has already been touched on already, so we'll kind of rapid fire through it, and I'll see what you have to say about it. So I wrote down like stupid questions that I feel like could have been answered by the text, but I was too lazy to go back through it. Again, so we've already talked about this one. Is the idea of a power being mundane purely qualitative?
I don't know how you could possibly quantify it,
Well,
so I guess definitionally yes.
okay, sorry. I guess qualitative is the wrong word here, but like, did King Daddy sit down and say, "Okay, this power is boring. This power is cool. That power is
This
boring.
one sucks.
Right.
I don't like it.
I'm going to call this mundane and make them live on Crime Street." Like, so like, is there any objective measurement other than like vibes for like what makes them mundane?
I think it's vibes, but like once removed,
Okay.
because I do think it has something to do with being quote unquote offensive or defensive. Like, because I believe all of the elites are offensives or defensives.
That sounds right.
So like that's why Brawny gets to be one of the good elites, even though it is, objectively speaking, one of the most boring ones.
Yeah, it is really boring. Like that's the kind of power I would give like the serving class to like build my castles better. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I would give the king. I would give the king lightning powers or something cool, you know?
I would give the king the power to make lightning strike when he achieves orgasm. Hold on. Wait, I need to write a book about this and make $10 million and be Mormon.
Be Mormon.
So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like being Brawny, that's the same power Thanos has. And he's not exactly remembered for having cool superpowers.
Yeah, he's just remembered for being purple. All right, so no answer on that one. So we hear time and time again, I should add this to the refrain list. Kai is the future enforcer. Who is the current enforcer?
Enforcer?
Shut up!
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I don't think there is one. There's not one mentioned.
I think the current enforcer is off on a quest with the other three fatals in the king's employ that's not like currently present, and they're going to be in a spin-off novel.
Okay, not to jump into suggestions, but I vote that the current enforcer should be his wife, because I think that would be kind of a twist. We don't see a lot of women in powerful positions in this.
Oh, yeah.
So if she was like this badass torturer / murderer, I think that would be a good fold to her character, and add even another fold to the King Daddy's genuine love for her. So keep that one in your back pocket, Lauren. But so there's no current enforcer, basically.
I like this question game. This is fun.
My third one we've already talked about ad nauseum. Why is Kai so good at braiding? I really, really, really thought there would be a dead girlfriend, dead wife, dead sister, dead girl person in his life, but I don't know.
You know, if you aged them all up a little bit, you could say that he had dated Blair previously and she was still trying to get back with him, but he was not interested. But like while they were dating, he learned how to braid her hair.
Ooh, and she could have a sloppily braided hair for the rest of the book. Like people comment on how sloppy the braid is to show through visual storytelling the effect that not having Kai in her life has wrought.
Yeah, why not?
What voting body decides who participates in the purging trials?
Is this a trick?
No, I'm asking.
I feel like the book suggests that the voting body is all.
So like everybody?
I don't know how that would be arranged.
No, I'm asking, I'm not telling. Like if it's everybody, it's everybody, but I know like you said that like King Daddy had his fingers on the scale, but like Peyton was just like, "Oh, they heard about the Silver Savior and they voted for her." But this isn't even the same question. How did they know that it was Peyton Gray, and how did they know that that was that person and that she represented the slums? But where do these people like get voted in from? I don't understand.
I have no idea. How would they even know her name? Like,
right?
Does that imply that there's like birth certificates in this world?
It must.
Or like church or parish records of births and deaths or some shit?
I have no idea, but like they had to have known somehow, which draws more questions of like how her life as a thief. Like, she's supposed to be surreptitious. How is that gonna work? But
Yeah.
I digress.
If she's so easily like found and identified.
We don't need to jump too into this one again, but I do want to highlight again, how is it that psychics are, one, not the kind of elites that are kicked out of the kingdom entirely, and two, so rare that even the prince of knowing everyone's powers and using it better than them does not have a good cultural understanding of what a psychic is supposed to be? Like to be a little bit offensive, like these would be like cultural stereotypes, you know, like how like people have certain preconceptions about this, that, or the other culture. It stands to reason that, oh, psychics are super intuitive, you
Sure.
know, like, so there should be like something in Kai, if no one else's, there should be in Kai's head some idea of what a psychic could be like. And the fact that Peyton is able to just like say whatever she wants, and Kai's like, well, I guess that makes sense. That really bothers me. With the interviews, it didn't bother me as much, but Kai is the prince of knowing how to use people's powers better than them.
Yeah, and like there's even like a really lame excuse that the book includes where it's like, "Oh, my power lets me shield me from you copying it or even
Yeah, it like
detecting
it
it."
works randomly, so you can't choose when not to use it.
Which and that just feels like playground rules. It's like,
Right.
"Oh, I have an everything proof shield."
Right, like,
Like, okay.
no, you don't.
Sure you do.
Yeah, whatever. So that just bothered me. I guess we won't get an answer out of that, but that I just want to call that out as something that I don't like. And then finally, this one might be me being stupid. What material help did appealing to sponsors bring to any of the trials?
I think Kai found water.
I know he
I
did.
think Kai found water, and then they got like a healing salve
Yeah.
or whatever. Poultice. That was
They
it
called
though,
it
I
a
think.
salve. Poultice I used because of Sonic High School, but it's the same. It's just a healing goo. So I hear you. That did happen. It was an unnatural stream, and it was a can of poultice. But like, did he get that because in the ball he schmoozed with the right sponsors? Like, what was the point of the balls and the interviews if that didn't?
You have to have them because Lightlark had them.
I guess. But it's like, even in the Hunger Games, that was pretty ambiguous, as I recall. Again, I was in middle school, just as young as Lauren Roberts was when I read the Hunger Games. But like, she got the tap that goes into the tree, and I don't think it was ever said like which specific sponsor got it, but she got it because she was so impressive in the pre-show trials or whatever. I don't remember, if not in the one that was literally the Hunger Games, certainly not the mountain or the maze. Like, having sponsors meant nothing.
But in the Hunger Games, like I remember pretty well, the reason that she got some kind of support from sponsors was A, because she like acted out in the archery
Yeah.
trial or whatever, where like she shot the arrow through the food that they were eating. And then also because in the interviews she came across as like folksy. And then also the people really loved like the dress that she wore, where when she spun around
Right.
it like kind of caught on fire a little bit. So like the novel went out of its way to have her do three memorable things specifically to entice sponsors, so that when she got like, and she got like tiny little bits of assistance, it felt earned. Whereas in this, it's just like you said, was it just them being around at the ball that got them some kind of sponsorship? And they got way, way bigger advantages than what they got in the Hunger Games.
I guess, but
And it seems like for nothing.
so yeah, that was, is Andrew stupid? Sounds like Andrew's not that stupid, but Lauren, if you're listening, please comment. I want to know the answer to these questions. I'm not just asking to be a jerk. Like, I literally like was trying to figure out like what's going on here. I feel like it was unbased that we brought Adina back into this thing just to kill her brutally
Yeah.
for Peyton's motivations. I don't have anything like deep to say about it. Just do that better in your second draft, please.
Also, like, the scene where she dies is one of the ones where they highlight that she is like a darker skin tone. Like, I think that they're trying to suggest that she's like black coated.
I think she's black.
Which I was like, this is really not the time for this.
No.
Like, it just seems very silly to be doing it now.
Especially when she's saying, like, sublimate me into an object, Peyton. It's okay that I'm dying.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being alive anyways. If anything, you're doing me a favor. Like, shut the hell up, Lauren. Don't do this.
Yeah, this is extremely avoidable.
At least have her go out, like, in a different way than being like, oh, well, that sucks, but I guess it needed to happen.
I mean, she's like tied up and bleeding and like stumbling around in the dirt, and then she gets stabbed in the back by a character literally everyone hates in the book, all but tells you, the reader, to hate. And
a character that she doesn't know.
God,
a character that
she
we
doesn't even
hate,
know her.
But she doesn't know. Maybe what if Peyton accidentally kills her in the skirmish? Like she ducks away from one of Bitchy Blair's blades, and it
oh no, not the alliteration.
Pierces her. I can't come up with the breaches Adina's breast, causing her to bleed profusely. So
profusely.
What I mean is, like, why did this have to be like a completely random character to Adina that inflicted this pain upon her? I don't want this to happen in the first place, but again, I don't mind this being where Adina dies. I just wish it were handled a little bit better to where she's not stoically passing on into the night.
Yeah. She does seem to like not really care all that much. Right. I mean, I don't know, maybe in Powerful we find out what happened before this, and like it was extremely becoming.
Right. Maybe in Powerful everything makes perfect sense and this book becomes a masterpiece.
He lets out another wheezing laugh, and I don't wait for him to stop coughing up blood before digging the point of my blade into his chest as I slowly say, "It was you!" He coughs out his next words.
Funny how the mind can make us see what we want to. I can't do this voice. Okay. Funny how the mind can make us see what we wish to. You already hated me for what I did to your kind, so it must have been easy to convince yourself it was me who drove that blade through your father's chest.
A bloody smile stretches across his lips.
But it wasn't.
Liar! I breathe, pressing the sword deeper into his chest. His next words are little more than a hysterical whisper.
Let's just say that your first encounter with the prince wasn't when you saved Kai in the alley.
No. No.
It was when he killed your father. As if that wasn't, like, implied by the last line.
Never let something go stated once if it can be stated twice or even 3 times. That's what I say.
First rule of writing school.
Yeah, we could leave it there.
Okay. It's not worth going through it. It's just like, you're a liar.
It's literally
no,
not.
I'm not. You're lying. No, I'm not. Like, come on. All right.
Duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season.
All right, Jay. Well, we were trying to make this a more casual affair, but it looks like old habits die hard. But we've laid out everything about this book, what it does well, what it does poorly. Let's bring it all together. Let's make this draft 2 better than it could possibly be so that Lauren Roberts doesn't accidentally submit absolute garbage to Simon & Schuster and then become a published book that will never be able to be taken back ever.
Yeah, it's as they say, you can't unpublish a published book.
That's
the famous
true.
saying that they say.
They do say that.
it's wise that they say that, because if your seventh grade NaNoWriMo project were to be published for everyone to see forever, that would probably be kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really grateful that the ancients passed on that wisdom to us. In the meantime, we can try to avert such a tragedy befalling not Lauren M. Davis. I had to literally look at the cover of the book. Lauren Roberts, whose name I said like 10 seconds ago and then forgot. We can help her avoid that. So we kind of started to allude to this already during our issues section, but I do agree with you, Andrew, that the Queen should be given a much bigger role, because it seems like multiple characters are invested in convincing Peyton and therefore the reader that the Queen is like actually really sick and cool and we should love her. And so I feel like the natural next step is to like actually make her cool.
Right.
And I like your idea of her being like a femme fatale type.
I think that would be fun. Really, like, there's nothing to her, and I did call it out as a good thing, but I wonder what King Daddy's unironic love for this woman says about her as a person, right?
Yeah.
Like, if evil child murderer man loves this woman, this woman probably sucks. I don't know.
She might, but like Kai says that like they have a good relationship and that
Mhm.
she's very sweet. So like it's kind of hard to imagine her also endorsing child murder, but then like maybe the way that she does it is like all the more insidious because it's more cloaked in like respectability politics or something like that, which I think would be very interesting personally.
It would be. Yeah, and this could be something you take a page out of from Nova's playlist, because it's like when Avril just ran into Vincent's mom one time, Peyton could be walking around the halls, and then there's just this one scene where it's like, it's me, the Queen. This is my whole deal, and this is why I'm a cool character. And then we have that information to apply to later points where we see her acting in other situations. Adding just a little bit of context would get you a long way with this.
A little bit of show don't tell. Hate to say it, but in this case I think it's 100% applicable.
100%.
Like all we have is tell, just characters telling us that the Queen is really awesome and based.
I do like the femme fatale angle. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think having her be like I think you said like an assassin in the previous section, having her be like, I don't know, Killua from Hunter x Hunter's mom would be pretty cool. Just somebody that like shit up, because why not?
Why not? Literally, why not? Because, like, I think we do lack for female characters that don't suck, that aren't Adina or Peyton.
Yeah, and Adina's like barely even a character.
Right. Female characters we love to hate, even. I'm not saying they have to be, like, perfect, but, like, Blair is a very flat note. You know, Blair is just...
Yeah.
But, like, having like this femme fatale, oh, she's so evil but she's so cool, and she's my boyfriend's dad, or she's my boyfriend's mom, and I don't, there's something there.
She's my boyfriend's dad.
So
wait, speaking of English Club merch, I need a "She's My Boyfriend's Dad" shirt.
Okay, I'll add that to the Teespring account. So this is also just a comparison from Lightlark, but I will go in the marketplace of ideas and I will offer, I do not think the twist was stupid. The twist at the end where King Daddy is like, it was actually my son who killed your father. Ooh. I say this all the time. It's like a catchphrase of mine. I say constantly, men's memories are uncertain, and the past that was differs little from the past that was not. So I completely buy that a traumatized 13-year-old would misremember the exact circumstances of her father's brutal stabbing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem accepting that as true. However, I have a problem accepting that creepy old man and 13-year-old pretty boy could be conflated with each other. So here's what I offer you. And we already have this, and maybe this is another extra layer of Andrew is stupid where I didn't pick up on this, because I know Imperial soldiers wear masks or have otherwise feature obscuring uniforms.
Yep.
Does the enforcer also wear a feature obscuring uniform, or does he just walk around in street clothes?
I think it's just him because doesn't when he steps into the house of the family that's sheltering the ordinary girl, doesn't the family immediately go like, "Oh my God, it's Prince Kai.
Right.
He's here."
So all right, so the enforcer, it doesn't have to be like just like the rank and file imperial uniforms. It could be cool and black and gold trimmed with a cool mask, or just like a billowy hood.
Yeah.
Or
It might as well be a superhero costume, basically, since
sure,
they're superheroes.
I feel like if he was just wearing some like costume, then all of this would be completely able to be washed over. But in the moment when I was reading this, I was like, you really couldn't tell the difference between a 13-year-old boy and a creepy man.
This is some like Ace Attorney levels of like miswitnessing a crime
Right.
where it's like who was really in the costume to begin with, but I actually really do like it a lot because I do think that like if you're 13 and like you're freaking out because your dad's being stabbed to death and like the king wears one outfit when he's the murder guy for the night and his son wears a similar but slightly
Right.
different outfit when it's his turn to be the murderer. Like I can see how a kid would mix those two things up. So sure, why not?
And again, the Imperials wear masks. I feel like that was like dropped in the first chapters and then forgotten about. Because
Yeah.
I don't think Lenny ever wears a mask. I think he's just a dude in a generic like soldier outfit.
I thought the Resistance guys wore masks that were like similar but like different from the Imperials masks to symbolize the fact that they're like also an organization, but they're good because their mask is the opposite of the bad organization's mask.
That only underscores my point that there should be more masks and more
Yeah, no,
attention
I agree.
drawn to the fact that you can't tell the difference between people. So I don't know. It bothered me so much because like again, I'm a little bit biased because what I'm comparing this to is it's not the bond maker, it's the bond breaker. And I've made two random women raise you for 18 years for no reason, just so that they could randomly betray you and then try to murder you in book 2. None of that is here. It is just, oh, I misremembered something that happened. And like in the grand scheme of things, that's not that stupid, especially for a traumatized 13-year-old. So why don't we just go all the way with it and make this actually make sense? Again,
It would be very easy to make it plausible.
you could have done anything and you gave us what you gave us, and that makes me so mad.
Or even just like if the king was there because it was, I don't know, Kai's first mission or something, and like her dad is already like on the ground and Kai is holding the sword, and then she can't bear to watch anymore, so she closes her eyes.
Ooh, yeah.
And then Kai doesn't want to do it, and so the king is like, here, let me, like, I'll show you how
Right.
it's done, and then he does it. But like she doesn't remember that or something. Like I
Right.
don't know, like there's like a million ways you could make this like plausible.
It could have been
It doesn't have to just be like she thought she saw a completely different looking person from
Right.
who she saw.
right.
But again, you know, first draft.
Yeah,
These
first
are the
draft.
kind of things that are fixable. I mean, the kind of suggestions that we're giving here, like you really only have to change the one scene,
Right.
the one where the big reveal happens, and that's very easy to do. You could really do that in a night.
Right. And then Simon and Schuster might accept it. Moving on from the stupid costume thing, this is something that I thought about a lot, and I wonder if this is something that you've also thought about, Jay, because as an aspiring novelist who wrote stupid books in middle school that would be embarrassing if they ever saw the light of day, I think a lot about like, okay, so character acquires important piece of information, but character can't act on it until half of the book later. I do understand how these things feel like they can happen, and I understand that when Peyton in chapter 3 picks up this piece of paper that says, hey, this is Peyton's address on it, that I understand like Lauren's feeling like she can't just derail the plot right now to go over and do the resistance thing. So I'm like, okay, so how do you preserve the structure of the plot without keeping anything too out of whack or doing too much crazy edits? How do you keep her busy for half of the book? And the answer is you can't. It is insurmountably difficult to give her an item in chapter 3 that she will not be able to act upon until halfway through the book. So here's my proposition for how you restructure this. So the initial pickpocketing is either just with Kai or just a random person. There's no paper, there's nothing like to that segment. But when the first ball runs around, using her intuitive powers, Peyton realizes, hey, this guy's acting kind of shifty. There's something imperceptibly off about him. So she does the pickpocketing then in the ball, and that's when she finds the paper. And our excuse for why she can't instantly run off and go is, one, she's in the ball, two, there's a terrorist attack right after that. And this is already adjacent to the scene where she actually does go to her parents' house. So there's no reason we have to give her this paper in chapter 3. Let's just give her the paper in the ball.
Yeah.
So we have that to think about. And then we're like, oh no, there's a terrorist attack. And then, oh no, now that we're calmed down from that, then let's go explore this thing. Because there's no way you can keep her busy for that long.
And it doesn't even really make sense for her to get it so early in the first place, because she pickpockets that right before she pickpockets Kai. So why have two plot critical pickpocketing events
Right.
within moments of each other? Like, why not just wait until later?
It feels like one of those save the cat things where it's just like, oh, this is my character, she's pickpocketing. Oh, don't worry, guys, here's the hint of my greater plot. It belies like a lack of trust in the reader, to where I'm like, you have to like give us this random contrivance to show like, oh, it won't be boring after all. Like, just show us something interesting and then we'll get to that point eventually, Lauren. So
Yeah, instead of actually like making the moment to moment experience interesting, it just promises that it'll become interesting later.
Right.
I have something that's kind of on a different track.
Okay.
But I would really like a version of this book where like the plague's religious significance is much more explored. Because something we didn't bring up in our summary, but it's another refrain that like the book just like bludgeons you to death with as you're reading it, is people saying like, by the plagues, what the plagues? And like, oh, plagues, I can't believe that happened. And it basically is just a replacement for like God.
Right.
And people have, especially people who have superpowers because of it, do have like this sort of like mystified awe and reverence in the face of thinking about the plagues, because it changed their life for the better mostly. And I feel like there's more to that. Like, it's another instance, like with the alliteration, where it feels like the book is interested in like language itself, right? Like it instead of having God in this linguistic place where God usually exists, it's included a plague, which is immediately very interesting. And I feel like that has cultural repercussions and suggestions that the book just like doesn't include at all. So my suggestion can't really be more complicated than like it should do that.
Yeah.
But I would like to see like, I don't know, Church of the Plague. I guess that's a place in Elden Ring, but you know, that kind of thing where it's like, I don't know, people worship this shit that like made them be able to fly.
This is another one of those like, what's the orthography, what's the etymology moments, because plague doesn't literally mean like a disease. Plague is specifically negative. So why do the elites call it the plagues? I understand that ordinaries would, but like maybe elites would call it the augmentation,
the blessing.
Ooh, yeah. Why isn't there a difference between the nomenclature between these groups?
I hadn't thought about that at all, but I think that would make a lot of sense. Like if the elites refer to it as like the blessing or something, and then the ordinaries in the resistance refer to it as a plague.
Yeah, the plague thing is just very weird to me. One, there should be like a church of the plague or whatever. Even if like King Daddy doubles as like the Pope of the plague or whatever, like we don't need like a new entity spawned off from this. Just like a more thorough exploration of like the societal religious aspects of that. Like, are there things other than the purging trials that celebrate the plague? Is there Plaguemas, Plagueween, Plaguesgiving? Like,
Plaguesgiving.
what What more can we add? Second bonus round of Is Andrew Stupid? In the beginning of Pay's, it might be like Payton's like first chapter, she hears Adina say, "Thank the plagues for that," and gets like all offended or whatever because of like what horrible things the plagues did for us. But then I swear, I could be wrong, but I swear she uses plagues rhetorically after that. So like, why have this little detail here where the plagues mean something so profoundly different to her, and then we forget about it after chapter 1?
There's a similar inconsistency very late in the book. I think this might be the only time this happens. You know, I'm not even gonna bother to try to find it. It doesn't matter. But somebody says like, by God or something like that, like capital G God, instead of like by the plagues. And I think it's the only time where that happens. And that just feels like, I don't know, when I read that, I was like, wait, has there been a God this whole time? Like, where do people get this concept of a God from? Because otherwise this book has felt completely like atheistic in the sense of just like there isn't a divine realm at all. And it doesn't even want us to think about it. And that's fine. It feels internally consistent for the world. But like, now characters are talking about God all of a sudden. I have to stop everything and wonder if I missed something for the whole book.
Hold on. Sorry. In curiosity, I control F'd for God in the legally archived ebook that I have from here. So yeah, God is used colloquially once, but then it's used again. This is like, reminds me of Fourth Wing in the acknowledgements. She says, "I'd like to thank the capital O1 who gifted me my love of words and desire to write. I truly would not be where I am today without my Lord and Savior, and I thank God for the opportunity he has given me." Which, like, based, but I did not see that coming in terms of, like, your religious fervor with this book, but whatever. If anyone would thank God in the acknowledgements, would probably think about like the religious aspects of the book that she's writing, but I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you've got characters taking the plague's name in vain all the time. Like, you have got to think about what that semantic construction means and why you've chosen to subvert it in that way. Like, it does not make any sense to me that you would do that and then not think about it. Because to do it, I feel like you would have to have thought about it to begin with.
Right.
Like, did she just think that saying "oh my plague" instead of "oh my God" was interesting enough and that she didn't have to do any further like exploration or expansion? I really don't know.
I have no clue. I have no clue, Jay. I don't know what to tell you. That's weird. That's really weird. I knew there was a God mentioned in there, but like, it was literally the one time where he's like, "God, you're beautiful."
Who's God?
I don't know. So yeah, a lot to do on the religious front. It's also like, it's oddly J.A. Johnstone in that regard, where why is God missing from this?
Yeah, it is.
Or why is religion missing from this, I should say.
Yeah, it's like totally not there at all. Wasn't Fourth Wing kind of like that? Was there any God in that?
Yes, it was, because that was like my biggest disappointment with Fourth Wing, is because like the idea that when someone dies, their souls are committed to Malekith, the god of death. So all of their worldly possessions are burned and or destroyed upon death. And I was like, wow, what does that do to generational wealth? And apparently nothing.
Yeah, that was in your half, wasn't it?
Right. So there was something in there. So even like Rebecca Yarros did this right, Lauren. So come on.
Okay, I feel like we've been talking about Peyton a lot, so I want to switch tracks slightly and talk about Kai.
Okay.
I would like to envision an alternate version of this book where his power, which, to remind people in case it's been a while since we talked about it, is to basically be Kirby and steal the powers of people around him. I would like to imagine a world where that power is seen as like a power for like little loser babies and everyone makes fun of him for it because it's like, I think it'd be funny if it was stigmatized, right? Because it's like, oh, you don't have any power of your own, you can only steal other people's power. Like, technically you can be offensive or defensive like a real elite, but like not really. It's like kind of fake.
They're telling him to pick a side. His bipowerality is very annoying to the other people.
Yeah.
I love that.
I feel like that could be fun. And I also feel like in this version that I'm imagining, his ability to just absorb a nearby power and switch between nearby powers would be an ability that he hones over the course of the book. So like he's not just already amazing at it at the start. We actually get to see him learn how to tap into like whatever sense he has of nearby powers and like select the most appropriate one for the situation, and even like get rid of one and pick up another like in the middle of a fight. And I'd like to see a scene early on where like he fails to do it, and then later in the book he does it successfully in like a clutch moment, and so like
Yeah.
there's marginally some kind of change.
Well, this would fold very nicely into my whole thing about like why is mundane a completely qualitative distinction? Like, not only should there be cultural understandings of what a psychic can do, what a brawny can do, even if you've never seen one necessarily, there should also be cultural connotations. That would be an interesting cultural detail about this world that is based off of the power system that you're creating here. And that would change nothing. You could just have that as little flavor text and it would make the world feel so much richer and deeper.
I think it would also develop his relationship with his dad, because the book like kind of pretends that they have this really complicated relationship where he resents his dad for making him kill people. And I think that like if at the same time he had a power that was seen as like kind of shit, and so he was trying to prove to his dad that his power is actually really cool and awesome actually,
Yeah.
that would, I don't know, sort of make it more interesting and textured.
Yeah, it would make him an underdog that we could maybe root for in some like disturbing way that makes us question our own morality, you know? Like
Yeah,
there's
that'd be interesting if like on one hand we're rooting for him, but on the other hand he beats a man to death in prison.
right. Right, and like that's something that's something again better than Grimshaw Malvere, so
Much so.
yeah.
It'd be good to have something to chew on.
Yeah, something that other than wow, he didn't murder that orphan, so I guess that makes him okay. Jay, Jay, wait, hold on. I'm getting a vision. I'm getting a sight from my psychic powers that I have, Jay. Jay, do you feel this energy? I'm
Yeah.
feeling I'm feeling another dimension from draft 2 of this novel.
Oh,
I can see in my mind's eye what the opening scene of this book should have been. Stick with me here.
okay.
Exterior, opulent marketplace, evening. A silver-haired girl gesticulates mysteriously into a mob of awed onlookers. She appears to be deep in thought. Is there an Adrian in the crowd? She shouts aloud into the crowd. No response. The girl seems unfazed. Something with A. Aiden? A quiet voice responds. My name is Aiden. The crowd, obviously full of morons, gasps in disbelief. How could this silver-haired girl correctly guess there was an Aiden in the crowd without magical powers beyond their understanding? The silver-haired psychic calls Aiden forward and studies them. The small cuts on their fingers, a feather in their hair. She then looks up and sees a hawk circling in the air, and the girl says, Your bird is in terrible, terrible danger. Aiden gasps. How did you know I had a bird? They say. You must go now, the girl says. But listen carefully. I have one last prediction for you. She leans in and whispers these words. 3:00. This means nothing, and the girl knows that it means nothing, but Adrian is so overwhelmed with emotion that they don't realize the meaninglessness of this prediction, nor do they notice that while the psychic was speaking, a slim figure used the spindly fingers of a practiced tailor to snatch a couple gold coins out of Aiden's coin purse, just enough to feed 2 people, but not enough for such a rich bird owner to notice that anything was missing in their coin purse. I can see this, as clear as day. Do you understand why this is the ideal opening of such a novel?
It sounds like you're saying that Aiden got scammed and Haktua?
That is exactly what I'm saying. So, so what happens? So this is behind the bit. This is what Psych meets Hunger Games meets Red Queen looks like. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon recently. You do not put Gardevoir in where you need Gallade. You don't mix the two. What happened is we wrote a story meant for a Gardevoir. We wrote a story meant for a cerebral, kind of stealthy, manipulative character, and we put in a physical attacker. Why is our opening her sneaking honey buns away from a cart when she has psychic powers? That could be her whole hustle. Like, this could be the book entirely. She can't just be Katniss. She can't just be a physical attacker. She needs to use the brain powers that her dad has given her. This is what it looks like to adapt Psych into Hunger Games. And then when the boys come in, she can use her psychic abilities to manipulate them, and that could still lead to the guilt that it does. And it won't just be, oh, I sure wish there was a secret passageway in this castle. You know, like,
Yep.
it's so close. It's so close. It's all there. This is all what we're establishing. I'm just putting these characters in scenarios where they can use their powers for the proper purpose.
Yep. 100% agree. And it would be nice to see Adina get to do something more than be around and produce clothing and then die and become sort of clothing in a spiritual, metaphysical way.
Right. That's funny. I didn't think about that. You're right. It goes back to this is a random order of non-intersecting boxes thing. Like,
yeah.
Why can't Peyton do Hunger Games shit with psychic powers, quote unquote? Why can't she do Red Queen shit with psychic powers, quote unquote? Why can't she do Hunger Games things with Red Queen shit? Blah, 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 blah. Every permutation of these three things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that. But it's so easy to have that. And it doesn't have to... I'm not proposing this elevated literary fiction. Kind of what I was thinking, and this goes into my little bit that I was doing, is I was picturing society looking kind of like Invader Zim. If you remember, like, how everyone in the planet was just, like, comically stupid, and how that would, like, lend itself very well to this character that was more cerebral and good at, like, picking up on, like, the small details. So, like, oh, I'm dumb. I just like watching teenagers fight each other. Like, I'm gonna be completely convinced that this girl is a psychic. We can stretch this out to cover pretty much the entire book. I'm just like, but no, we have her stealing cinnamon rolls, and she mistakes the honey on her hands for blood for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, you just proved how easy it is to come up with, like, the kind of scene that would vastly improve this book. So I don't think I have anything else I can really add to it. You just did it.
Lauren, again, you wrote a book that was better than Lightlark, but that's like saying you crashed this car better than this highway-wide pileup. But then the things you do with the building blocks you have don't make any sense and are contrary to what would make this book good and fun to write. Honestly, I had more fun coming up with the idea of this psychic thing that she has going on than it was probably fun to write. Oh, I'm escaping from the guards, and then let me guess, someone stole your sweet roll. Like, I'm not a genius. Bro. I'm not a genius is what I'm saying.
I just can't imagine why you would write a book that's about all these superpowers if you're not going to, like, invest in telling us what all the superpowers are at the outset and, like, setting up a world where characters use the superpowers in cool ways. Like, why are we finding out about the plant growing or plant creating people at the very end of the book,
Right.
when like you could have had a plant creating person like in the team of people that's having to go through the trials, and like obviously they're at a disadvantage because they don't have like a clear offensive skill, but then we could see them do cool things with the plants that you wouldn't expect. Like maybe one obvious thing they can do is make a tree, and then like they hide in the tree, and then Kai can't get them because he's scared of heights. And that can be something that they can do that like shows that they have power but isn't necessarily that interesting. But then in the second trial, maybe they grow a bunch of vines to help them climb the mountain. See, like I'm literally doing this right now. It is so easy and it's interesting.
That's what I was gonna
say.
The
book doesn't give a shit.
I was biting my tongue because I'm like, Lauren, do you see how effortlessly Jay came up with that? How stupid the idea was and how better it was than what's going on in this book. I don't get it.
And I don't think I'm a genius either. Like it just is that easy. If you can write this, you can do what I just did. Like clearly.
Oh my god, it makes me so angry. Like it's one thing. It's one thing when Alex Astor comes over and she's like, "Hey, what if I turned the word bond breaker into bond maker?" And I'm like, okay, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Get out of my face. I don't care about you. But then Lauren Roberts comes in and she's like, oh, I have this great idea and it's going to be awesome. But I also took a page out of the book of the Real Life English Club guy who says the stream deposited its liquid load. And I think that's okay. And like,
no, it's super deep, guys. It's a reference to Beowulf.
Right, and I'm just like, one, no, it probably isn't. Two, that doesn't make it okay. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, Lauren. I don't know what to do. And it frustrates me to no end. I don't have the same perverse fascination with you as I do with Alex Astor, but this is the angriest I've gotten at a book in a long time.
This is definitely one of our more bizarre ones.
Yeah. And I wasn't expecting much. I could have been perfectly fine with, a stupid little silly YA book, but we couldn't even have that.
It's sad. I think the kids deserve better, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, if we're billing this as YA, that makes me sad. Because this book is I don't know, generic from the inside out. Like, the cover... this book is so devoid of visual identity that the cover is the most generic fantasy cover you could possibly have. It's literally the title in big letters and then like a fantasy object superimposed behind it with some plants. And the object is
those
just
are forget-me-nots. They're forget-me-nots.
Oh my god.
And that's her father's dagger,
care.
Jay. That's her father's dagger. It's so important.
Is that her father's dagger? Are we sure? It's really fancy.
It's silver, so I thought it was. I don't know. I kind of just assumed.
Guess. Still, it's the most boring kind of fantasy cover you can possibly have.
Yeah, no, I'm being facetious. It's not.
I mean,
fun
I guess you're technically right. It's forget-me-nots.
At least Lightlark had like a human heart in it. Lauren, I get the vibe that you're trying to publish this like way too quickly. So I'm glad we caught you now before this entered Simon and Schuster's hands, so we can tell you.
Me too.
You know, yeah, some things that you can do to like not humiliate yourself in public forever, irrevocably for the rest of your life, and you will always be the person who wrote the stupid alliteration book that sucked. Because it, again, not to draw more, I feel like all we do now is like reference other episodes, but not to compare it to Zenith again. Like, I liked the dramatic irony with Kit and Peyton, where Peyton is like, oh, Kit's trying to have this really cute moment with me, but I'm just using him to get the resistance this information, like, or like the moral ambiguity of Kai, where Lauren unflinchingly showed us this guy who is not good and then asks us to accept him as a love interest. I think that's brave. I think that's advanced.
Yeah, it's pretty bold.
But when we have these brave, bold, beautiful decisions that baffle the beloved minds, it just won't do. And I'm sad about that. But
Yeah, it feels like similar to Lightlark. Sorry, I'm going to continue the
please.
trend of referencing old episodes, but similar again to Lightlark, it does kind of feel like, well, I should say, hypothetically, if this were to be picked up by a major publisher and they were to just kind of shit it out with only minor line edits, that would be failing the author as much as anything else because they know they publish good books all the time, so they know what a good book is, and they know that this is not
that.
it.
No,
and
of course.
That would be really sad because then undoubtedly Lauren Roberts would look back on this in 10 years and be like, why did they let me publish this? Oh, because it was worth 10 golly gee trillion dollars.
Right. And
it was a completely cynical decision, and no one actually believed in my book or my work.
I guess
and actually it was kind of an
it.
insult that they published it.
Yeah. I'm glad you got your rent paid, Lauren, because damn.
Training and torturing have kept me sane over the past couple of days, though I'm well aware that only an insecure person would admit that. It's almost been a week since the first trial ended, almost a week since I buried a blade in Jax's chest, almost a week of restraining myself from doing the same to Ace. So I keep busy, pounding my fists into mats so they don't find their way into somebody's face, seeing that I don't have the silencer to beat down on anymore. It's a shame I killed him.
Jesus Christ.
This is a character that we should feel bad for. Certainly.
He's got some stuff to work out.
He's very complicated.
He's very complicated. Well, Lauren, I think we finally reached the end of our club meeting today. I really do appreciate you submitting this work. If no other time than now, we need to stop doing our bit.
Yeah.
I really feel like this book came out like way too early, and there's so much good about this, and I know, like, if you're Lauren Roberts, you're probably, like, frothing at the mouth, like, super angry at us, like, but, like, I hope if you're watching this as a prospective, like, writer or something, that our dismissiveness of this book comes off as, hey, this book could have been awesome had just a little bit more time and effort been put into it, rather than, hey, you shouldn't have ever written in the first place, you suck, I hate you, die. I don't want that to be our message here, because, like, I would have loved Hunger Games meets Red Queen meets Psych. That would have been awesome to me, and I wouldn't have had a problem with it.
Yeah, it sounds like, Lauren, you might have just gotten caught up in, like, a social media frenzy, and, like, in the thrill of having the opportunity to put your work out there, you put it out there before it was really ready. And I do think that's sad, and like with Lightlark, I think it's sad that publishers are willing to allow that to occur just for their own profits. Because certainly any editor that works at Simon & Schuster that is seeing Powerless knows that it is not ready, but is putting it out because they're being paid to do so, and they're letting you down. And if they tell you that they really believe this is a good book, they are lying to you, I think. And that sucks. That really sucks. And I think that is probably not going to be good for your career later on, even, or like your sense of your own self as a writer. I feel like that would be very undermining to my confidence as a writer if I learned later in my career that, like, a book that everybody had told me was ready to go was, like, actually not ready to go, and they didn't really think that.
And that makes you a victim.
It would make me question my ability to judge my own work. Yes, it does. Yeah.
It makes you a victim. It's sad, and I think there's too much good in this book for me to, like, say, you know, you never should have written a book in the first place. You never should have ever written, because that's a horribly cruel thing to say. Two, it's patently false for Lauren Roberts'
it's definitely
case.
not
like
true.
there's something here, and it's like you just looked in the wrong places for it, or some
it just needs
kind
more
of
time.
Yeah,
more feedback, more drafts. Like, this book just isn't ready to be in the world, and yet it is, and it was published by such a big publisher that I feel like it makes it mockable in a certain way. So like if we do seem like harsher than usual on this episode, I think that's why. It's not because we hate Lauren Roberts or something like
No.
that. It's because like this book is out there as like a product that you can purchase, and it is patently not ready for that stage of like public viewership.
Yeah. For now, I think there's just some very basic things that need to be focused on, and we'll circle back to it once it's in a better place, right?
Right, some very basic things.
Yeah. So, I've been Andrew.
And I am tired of these books being about ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, that too. If you are in the Order of the Orb Fox, please vote for a book that is not about ethnic cleansing. At time of recording, we have not received our full results yet, so we don't know what our next episode is. If you want to be able to decide that next episode, feel free to join the Order. If you want to suggest a next episode for a pool of us to choose from, I would suggest you join our basic tier. And either way, we will hopefully not be talking about ethnic cleansing next time around. But for now,
We can only pray to the plagues.
We can only pray to the plagues and our Lord Jesus Christ, our Savior.
And the God Stars.
And the God Stars, and also Animus. There's actually a lot that you can choose from. So
yeah, we've got quite the pantheon going now that we've started to lay them out.
Yeah. All right, so get out of the meeting room. I'm tired. I want to go to bed. Kai. His attention snaps to me. My coronation is completed. Father's burial has been dealt with. Spelt Delt in my copy. Was that how yours was spelled?
Mine's right.
Okay. I pause, needing a moment to clear the emotion from my throat. And you are now my true enforcer. He nods slowly, knowing all of this information already.
Me when I know all of the information.
Me when I tell you things I know. As you know, we're going to murder this girl. Right. So, it's time for your first mission. He nods again, just as slowly. It's a formality. We both know he couldn't refuse even if he wanted to. He has sworn his services to me despite how damn awkward our dynamic has become. Awkward. I knew I would be ruling over my brother one day. I just didn't think that the day would come so soon, so suddenly. I school my features into neutrality. Find her.